History is full of rich connections to God and the great outdoors He created for us. I'm on a mission to share these experiences with my children, alongside other fathers who want to introduce their sons and daughters to the beauty and bounty of the world where we are blessed to walk with our Heavenly Father in His garden. My name is Jacob Whitley. This is Fathers and the Great Outdoors.
Throw it. Oh, so close.
I just got in a school tree hut.
You squirrel tree hut?
I died, sorry.
It's okay, you reeling it.
Welcome to Fathers in the Great Outdoors. As always, if you want to support this content, you can check out the store on greatoutdoorspodcast.com. And we have plenty of fun merch and some outdoors gear as well. Today we have Jeremy Carnes. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. I really appreciated it. I love any opportunity to be able to share anything about the outdoors and anything about the Lord and my kids. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why I started this podcast. So I'm glad to be able to talk to other fathers.
Yeah.
So just jumping into it, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got started in the great outdoors?
So, I'm 33 years old. I'm a father of three. I have two boys, one little girl. Peter is my youngest. He's 6. Callie is my second youngest. She is 7, and then Simon is 12. And they are all in love with the outdoors. They all love fishing, hunting, and everything like that. And I got started in the outdoors when I was 7 years old. First time I ever went anywhere into the outdoors was going squirrel hunting with my uncle. My father nor my mother were avid outdoorsmen at all, and growing up, so all of my outdoors side of life between fishing and hunting and everything came from my uncle. And I went squirrel hunting when I was 7, and there's a funny ongoing story that my uncle shares all the time about me being a kid and growing up and everything. And that was that whenever I was 7 and we went squirrel hunting, I fell asleep in his lap, and he woke me up with a shotgun blast. And so it was definitely an experience, a core memory that definitely has stuck with me all of my life. And but
was that on purpose?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, he's a little ornery. He definitely does stuff like that. He's a good also. But so it all came from him as far as the outdoor side of stuff. But I never truly became like in love with hunting until I was 15. And when I got in my teenage years, of course, I went through that stage of life where you're trying to find out who you are and everything. And you go through sports and everything else. And I did all that stuff, but the one thing that I felt like I found identity in was the outdoors, and that came from strictly deer hunting. And I would have to say that deer hunting helped save my life in a lot of ways, especially at that time. So,
oh yeah,
but yeah.
Why is that, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can just dive deep into my story. So, my parents split when I was 9 years old, and my dad, he moved to out of state, about 7 hours away and everything. So our relationship was a little on the stressed side as far as being able to be there any way that I could have wanted, I guess you could say. And but he was my sports coaches all throughout, school and everything. But him and my mom chose different paths and everything. And so that really took a hard toll on me at that age. And from the ages of like 12 to, I would have to say 15, 16, I went through a lot of like starting something and doing really well at it, but then would just quit and get out of it. And my mom would always tell me, she'd say, I'm not going to sign you up for something if you're not going to finish it. You're going to have to finish it, because I'm not going to raise someone that doesn't finish that's not going to hold their word and finish what they start. And so I was just in a very strong battle of trying to find out, do I continue to pursue the love of sports, though it was kind of like an open wound to past trauma and all that stuff. And I ended up moving in with my uncle at the age of 14. And whenever I started living with him, he's just an old country fella. Like that's just that's the only way I can explain it. He's just an old country fella. He farmed, he hunted, he fished, but he didn't do anything on the realms of like being a superstar. He was definitely a DIY, make with what you got. I actually, my first compound bow he gave me was like a late 80s model Ben Pearson compound bow. It was as tall as I was. And it was definitely an experience, but it was an experience that completely, molded my life from having an understanding of you don't have to have the greatest and latest best stuff in order to get out there and enjoy a passion that you're pursuing. You can get out there and use what you got. And that is a part of what really helped further my journey for just being persistent with whatever life throws at you, with whatever life gives you. Just stay positive and stick to it. And in the end, you'll end up getting the trophy of life, I guess you could say, which once mine was, I was 16 years old and I killed my first deer and everything. So, but it's pretty wild how life accumulates certain things, I guess you could say, certain situations, but how positive outcomes can come out of it, even though at times you don't feel like it will become positive. So,
right.
But yeah.
Was there anything in particular that felt, I guess, kind of that father-like connection that you had with your uncle?
100%. It was something that, obviously in life I was missing, but I was definitely searching for. And I think what I was really searching for was consistency, because out of a father, that's what you want. You want someone that's going to be there and everything. And this is not throwing shade at my father in any way, shape, or form, because he's a good.
Right.
He just lived a very long ways away to where he wasn't able to be there, at all times. But he was a phone call away, and I'm still very close to my dad. He'll be here tomorrow, actually. So. For Christmas and everything. So it has nothing to do with that. It just had everything to do with it as a kid that had questions, but was afraid to ask them to get them answered. And so that's what it really boiled down to. So.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What was, as far as your faith goes, was that involved in that during that time?
Yeah. So back to the point of when my parents split, growing up prior to them splitting, we went to church and stuff about as normal as any other church household would. Now, ours was a little more sparse for the sake of that my dad worked 2 jobs. So as far as being tired all the time, it was up to my mom to take us. And so she basically raised 4 of us while he worked all the time. And so we went to church and everything, but it was very sparse in nature. And there would be seasons where we would go very consecutively, and then there'd be seasons to where we very rarely went. And I just think that was the journey of life for them, rather.
Mm-hmm.
But once my parents did split, my mom never remarried, and I always said that my mom got married to Jesus, because she started taking her faith very, very seriously from that point forward. And from the age of, I want to say, 10, 11, somewhere through there, we lived in the church. So it was definitely a part of my life for all the way up till I graduated high school and got out of the house. She told me, me and my sister would get upset because we were like, we don't want to go this Sunday, or we don't want to go this Wednesday. She'd say, you cannot go when you turn 18. And we took that very seriously. We were like, well, when we're 18, we're flying the coop. And but we always came back. But so the Lord was always very present, but I was still a very problematic kid that very well tested the limits of every youth pastor that I had, and every pastoral figure that I had. I just was a very trauma-bound kid that needed breakthrough in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that came when I was about 16 going on 17. That's about when that came. And that's when a lot started changing. So,
Right. About I think you said the first year was when you were 16.
yeah, I was 16 years old whenever I killed my first deer, and it was definitely a life impacting moment. So
What, I guess, kind of going forward from there, how did the outdoors or even just hunting specifically um, help keep you focused, if I'm understanding your story correctly?
So I was always very detail oriented as a kid growing up. When I played sports, I had to be the best. I wanted to be the starter. I wanted to be the star per se. And with hunting, it wasn't necessarily about being seen. It was about being able to be concealed and being able to not to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it taught me a lot about patience. And like, because my uncle used to say this to me all the time. I'd walk behind him in the woods and he'd be like, you need to slow down. We don't need to go so fast. You're in a hurry to want to get to your stand and sit in it. And I understand. He said, but you can hunt while you're going to your stand. And I used to think all the time, he's crazy. He don't know what he's talking about. But I was just a stubborn young kid wanting to get to what I wanted to do. But as I progressed and realized that it helped me slow down significantly, because it made me have to think on the fly in the midst of when, I don't know if anybody else knows about this, but I'm sure they do. But buck fever, when you
Mm-hmm.
get the jit, whenever something's about to go down, I get just as jacked up about a doe than I do about a 150-inch buck that I shoot. And it's because it takes me back to that point of passion, to where like it's more than just the hunt. It's about all the opportunities that you took a hold of leading up to the hunt and everything, and all the practicing and all the effort that it takes to be successful in the field. And because archery was something that I fell in love with very, very early in my hunting life. I wasn't allowed to use a gun uh, until I was able to kill one with my bow. It
Hmm.
was it was a rule. My uncle would not allow me to use a gun until I could harvest one with a bow, and the reason that was is because he wanted to teach me what it meant to be able to be near one without them knowing that I was there, and to teach me how to be uh, methodical, I guess you could say, in my movements and everything. He genuinely taught me what it was like to be a woodsman, and so it was something that definitely made an impact on me in a ways of patience, which I think now back, I think he knew that I needed that, because he would have conversations with me about how I needed to be thankful because I have a good mommy and everything. And I
Right.
didn't need to be so hard on myself, and I didn't need to be so hard on her and everybody else, because like I said, I really had a lot of stuff going on in my life, to where genuinely I believe with all of my heart that between God and hunting, God used hunting to help bring a little bit of stability to my life. Yes.
Yeah. Kind of some, taught from your uncle, but at the same time, some self-taught lessons that most kids don't even get to receive.
Yeah. I always felt at a young age, like my aunt, which is my mommy's sister, she'd say, "Now, Jim, don't you let that baby hang in that tree by himself."
Hmm.
And he'd be like, "All right, Charlotte, I won't." But he'd get me up in there and he'd be like, "All right, you're gonna hunt right here, and I'm gonna hunt over here." And so we'd have to keep the secrets to ourselves. But he showed me what it was and what it meant to be trustworthy, and to honor someone's willingness, I guess you could say, to take time out of their hunt and to take time out of their pursuit, and to want to cultivate that inside of me. And thinking back on it now as an older man and with my kids and everything, and I see those little details, they really have changed my entire perspective of the outdoors and of life, because it's made me realize how much you don't think about it at that time, but when you get older, you realize some people are very selfless in nature, whether you realize it or not. And I'm just thankful for it. So,
Yeah.
oh.
What's when you kind of were looking to start a family, did you have in your head that the kind of same experiences and lessons you were learning you wanted to bring on to your own future kids? Did that cross your mind at all?
Yeah. So, like I've said, I'm fueled by the outdoors, and my oldest son, he's kind of like, he likes it for a little bit. He liked it a lot more when he was younger, but he's definitely into his own style, which is perfectly fine. I have nothing wrong with that. And I ask him every year, "You want to go?" He says no. I don't push him. I'll ask him a few weeks later if he wants to go. No. So it's not a big deal. He killed his first deer last year. And but my youngest son, Peter, who's 6, he is whatever dad's doing, I'm doing. Like, I'm talking gung ho. I picked him up earlier, and the first thing he asked me was, "Are we going to go buy some deer corn?" And I said, "No." I said, "I'm not." I said, "No, we got too much to do today." And he said, "Well, why not?" And and I was like, "Well, we got a lot to do. We can't go do that right now. We'll go do it tomorrow." So he's all about it, and it don't matter if it's spitting snow and 5 degrees outside. He's like, "Let's go fishing." And I'm like, "Well, it's probably not so ideal for you to get out there right now on the boat and do all that. So, but we'll go when the weather straightens up and stuff." But it's always been a passion for me, from the sake of I hate to keep going back to this, but it's so part of the root of who I am. But what I felt like I mentally endured as a child, I never wanted that for my kids. And I wanted to ensure that, to the ends of the earth, I wanted to impart into them my consistency of being available to them and making sure that they knew that at the drop of a hat, Dad would do whatever's necessary to ensure that they are just as involved as I am. And that just because I love deer hunting and I love fishing and I love the outdoors, it would never replace the love that I have for them. And so involving them in something that I am so passionate about, it definitely is a spiritual thing, because when you read the gospel, the Bible says that when you train up a child in the way that they should go, when they grow older, they'll not depart from it. And I think that is so wise in saying, because, even scientifically proven, in the first 7 years of a child's life, the foundation of who they are is molded. And so, like, I try to take very seriously how I raise my kids, whether it be through the gospel, through outdoors, or just through being a good human in general, being a good brother and a good sister and everything like that. And so it's very important to me to raise up kids that want to pursue their passions. And as long as their passions are not, destroying them or anything else, because you can have good passions and you can have bad passions. So,
yeah, you just got to focus on the ones that God wants for you.
That's correct. That is correct.
What was, I guess, kind of like the first memories of when you did start introducing your kids?
So, Simon being, a lot older than them, I would have to say the very first memory I have was, I'm a big public land hunter. I love public land. I love the vastness of the woods. I love you. The only border is you. Like, you are your only border out there, and as far as you want to go, you can go. And taking my son out on the river with me by boat access early morning, and I think Simon was probably 7 then, 7, 8 years old, somewhere through there. And having that deer hunt with me, and he literally sat out there from daylight till dark with me, and he just hung in there like a hair on a biscuit. He didn't get upset or nothing. And it was a good experience, that's for sure. And so that was definitely one. And I think it was more important because of the sake of not about even harvesting anything, but that I was able to share something with him that made such an impact on my life and had such an imprint on me in a positive manner.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know what's interesting about because you're from Kentucky, right?
Yes. Yeah. Kentucky.
There you go. So when you talk about the vastness of it, I know I was reading up on what was it, Davy Crockett?
Yeah.
And he looked at Kentucky as kind of this haven for like the perfect hunts and things like that. Yes. I'm sure it's not the same as what he once dreamed of, but would you definitely recommend it?
100%. When it comes to Kentucky, there's no place like my old Kentucky home. I hunt Georgia, Ohio. I've been to Alabama. I've been through Tennessee. I've been to a lot of places. I have family that lives out in Colorado. That's probably the closest to like as remote as you can get is probably Colorado. But there are some areas out here in Kentucky with as far as public land structure that is so large that if you went to the very middle of it and got dropped and had to hike your way back out, I mean, you'd be out there for a few days.
Oh yeah,
it's that large. And not only is it so amazingly, beautiful, just there's no sunset like a southeastern Kentucky mountain sunset. And they're just, I don't care what anybody says, they're beautiful. And you get up on the mountains and you watch the sun just fade away and melt off, and behind that mountain, it's breathtaking.
Yeah.
And, not only that, but the amount of wildlife that's there. Everything you're going to see from a bobcat to a coyote to a deer to a bear to an elk to, some areas you can find wild pig, but they're not more prone here on this side, but they're more up in the eastern, I would say south or mid northeastern side of the state, but pushing that West Virginia line and stuff. But it's beautiful. Kentucky, I'd recommend anyone. Not a lot of people will probably get happy about this, saying, yeah, a bunch of out-of-staters come hunt.
All my followers now go to Kentucky.
I would recommend, if you can hunt Kentucky one time, give it a shot, and try the mountain side of hunting, because that'll test you, and it'll make you realize if you got the grit and if you are willing to put in the work. Because if you can kill a mountain buck, hunting flat country is not too hard. I just put it like that.
Yeah. And that's the east side?
Yeah, southeastern Kentucky.
Southeast.
Yeah, all Appalachian range is what it is.
Right. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's just awesome.
Yeah. I realize I misspoke. It was Daniel Boone, not Davy Crockett.
Yeah. I figured that's who you were talking about, but I both of them shoot flintlocks, so no worry.
Yeah, there you go. Just slightly different eras. What? So, are you, when you're up there, are you doing spot and stock, or is that from a tree stand?
So I'm majority tree stand. I've done spot and stock in my life, and I do a lot of spot and stock with a gun. I won't do it much with my bow, just because I enjoy. I'm really good at being able to hone in on sign and finding out where they're bedding and going to their food. I'm pretty good at that. And I mean, this joker right here, I had him so dialed in that it wasn't even funny, but it still took me from October the 8th until December the 19th to get him killed, because you're talking like in an area that he was in and he was ranging in, it was unbelievable. Because you got to think, on these mountains, they can bed anywhere. They're going to favor what keeps them safe, and they can hide behind any little nook and cranny that you can imagine. And unless, like, you're going, like when I go and hunt in Ohio, you got cornfield, bean field, everything like this. here, there, and everywhere. And then there's a little patch of woods up there. And it's like, well, obviously they want cover, so they're going to be over there. So it's a little easier, but it's definitely not like the mountains. And but I tree stand hunt majority. I'm a very mobile hunter. I pack in, pack out. I just hang my stand, throw my sticks on the tree, climb up, set it up, rock and roll. I film my hunts and stuff through my outdoors channel and stuff, and that's a endeavor in and of itself. I mean, that's a whole other ballpark of trying to hunt, and adds a whole other game to trying to kill them anyways. And so it's tough, but it's fun. It definitely sparked a new love again. So
is that mountain area open enough to be able to glass, or you just have to track?
So with Kentucky, you have a lot of big, I would call, they're called timber cuts, but I call them power line cuts, because obviously if you're going to run power through the vast part of the country, you're going to have power lines running through there. So what they'll do is that if you've ever watched how they cut power lines, they literally just cut them through a mountain. I mean, like, you got a big old mountain come up through here, and it's a big clear cut going to the top of the mountain, and there's power lines going all the way up it, and then they drop to the other side. So that's about as good as the glassing as you could get on this side of the state, unless you have some big vast points of country that the Forest Service has cut or whatnot, and you can get up on them knobs and glass down and everything. But majority of it's all big hardwood solid timber, and I mean, like, high standing timber. You're going to have to get in there and find the sign and find where they are. And my success has come from finding so I apologize.
Interview's over.
Yeah, I got a woman from my church trying to get a hold of me here. And so the biggest thing is about trying to find their sign as far as their bedding and their feeding habits, and then kind of honing in on that. And so
right,
that's the biggest success rate that I've had personally. But
so it almost sounds like you look for those spots, and then at that point you would get up in a tree because you know where you're in the correct spot.
You got to play the wind. Now, playing the wind in topography, anybody that knows anything about hunting the mountain, it can be predicted a dominant northwest wind, but as soon as it hits this ridge face and jumps over and hits this bottom, and it swirls real quick and it jumps up that west side of that ridge, it starts tumbling and going and everywhere. So it's really hard to get any type of prediction on wind, but that's where your thermals come into play. That's when you learn, okay, well, if this wind is dominant and my thermals can pull this same direction as this wind, and it's you got to have a bulletproof setup, because these mountain bucks are not easily fooled. They know what they're doing. They know where to go, where not to go. They know where the pressure's at, and you have to be on that perfect kill wind in order to get the job done. I like high sheer bluff mountain faces that take a hard push to the top when the wind's coming up, and then it kind of sits up and then drops off the backside, because they just know what they're doing, and it just helps kind of just beat that swirling a lot. That's what I think. So when I say mountain faces, and like, I'm talking sheer bluff walls that are 30, 40 foot high with you could rock climb them and stuff. So, but that's what I like.
It sounds like more interesting landscape than North Carolina.
Well, yeah, if you get over there in the Ural's eastern side of the state, up towards like Chimney Rock and stuff like that.
Right.
It's a lot like that. And it's not really too much different. So it's, I would have to say, when I get more southeastern side from where I am located in my hometown, it gets a lot like that. Like, it's big, good sized mountains. But whenever on my side, we have the mountains still, but you still got a lot of your flat ridge runs that got some rolling areas and everything. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds and everything. But I'm local to the Cumberland Falls area here, which you might have ever heard of it. I don't know, but it's one of the largest waterfalls in the U.S. here, and so it's pretty torrential on that side, which is where I hunt and everything, and in that part of Daniel Boone, and but it's tough. It's not easy country. Big snake, big deer, big bear, big everything. So
sounds like big reward though.
it is, and that's the thing is that if you can get one out there, you got it done with hard work and effort. It's easy to come up on one and on a strike of luck, during the rut, one's just pushing through a certain area. But to be able to get out there and find where that deer is specifically using as his core home range, that's a real job. It takes some serious effort and boot leather to be burned in order to figure it out. So, but it's fun. I love it. Every year I get out there and I'm beating myself down because I'm like, Lord, I'm more slick out. But you just love it.
Yeah.
My cousin makes fun of me. So grind, and I'm like, I know. So,
well, that's part of it, is being out in God's country.
Yeah, I love it. It definitely is my second church, I would say.
Yes, exactly. It's what I describe as my ability to worship is going out into the outdoors. Mm-hmm. I've never been big into the music stuff, which it pleases me when I see people getting really into it, but it's never been something that I've been able to connect with.
Yeah.
So in regards to like the being able to read like the wind and things like that, where did you acquire that knowledge?
So I'm a big podcast nerd. Like I'll give some shout outs to some of my biggest plugs as far as that I watch constantly. The Mobile Hunter podcast. I watched the Southern Outdoorsman. I actually got it on behind the computer here. I was watching it before you got a hold of me there. And I watch just about everybody. I would have to say one of the best mountain hunter channels that I watch and learn how they do stuff is called The Untamed with Josh Ilderton and all them guys out of West Virginia.
Right.
They hunt some serious cold country because that's where we are. We're in a lot of cold country, and they hunt what is called like big valley fields and everything, and learning how they do a lot of more spot and stalking and glassing and stuff because they got big valley fields that they can view into. But it's not a lot like that here in my area, but it's still kind of the same concept. Wind is wind in a mountain, whether it's here or whether it's there. And so the same concept applies. So just becoming a student to the game, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes most people learn or most people accommodate. They feel like if they have accomplished one facet of hunting, then they've mastered it. And that is not the case when it comes to mature whitetail deer. You can take one aspect of it and learn it, and it applies to that one way of hunting. Now you take it and you go apply it somewhere else. It can rinse and repeat, but there's still a few more factors that you're going to have to kind of, apply to that specific hunting tactic, I guess you could say. But when it comes to the wind, you kind of just learn by scouting genuinely. Like when you're walking on top of a ridge, you can feel the wind cutting this way, and then you make a little dog leg turn to the left, and all of a sudden it turns and it's coming directly into your face and everything because it's just based off of how the topography. Wind is like water. So if you ever take water and you pour it downhill on something, it just finds its way to go through the rut. That's the same way wind does. And so when it's passing through trees and everything, it's just bouncing around it and finding its ruts to get around and everything. So if you're in a certain position off that trail where they're walking in on, that wind's going to hit and it's going to just push itself a certain direction of where the next blockade is and then swirl around it. So you got to have a dominant wind in order to get that. But you learn it by trial and error because I have had more failures than I've ever had successes. But boy, do successes taste so good with the seasoning of failure because you failed, but you got it completely done. So,
right.
But it's just a bunch of knowledge, man. I mean, just listening to podcasts and learning how to mountain hunt. That's about basically it.
There's that quote by, I think it was Thomas Edison. It said something like it took him 99 tries to make the light bulb or whatever the number was. And someone asked him if he felt bad failing 98 times. And he says, no, I just figured out 98 ways it doesn't work.
Yes, that is correct. That's 100%. I've always said failure isn't final. It's just a checkpoint along the road to success. So you're gonna endure it, but I encourage you to embrace it, because it's the very thing that makes it so nice when you do get it done. So
Yeah.
I tell my wife all the time when we're doing something, I say, when we're about halfway done or almost done, I say, think about this. We could be back at the beginning, just starting all over again. I said, but here we are at the end. So it's just a little fresh reminder. I keep myself all the time. I tell myself that when I'm walking in the woods. I say, I could be back at the truck, loading gear on my back, and not a mile and a half in already. So just keep pushing, keep going to the next tree, keep going to the next cut, see what you can find here. If you looked at my Onyx maps, there's pins here, there, and everywhere, because I just don't stop. My wife calls me the mountain goat. When I get in the woods, I just keep going. I don't. So we do a lot of foraging and everything, hunting mushrooms and stuff. And
Do you?
Calls herself the penguin, and calls me the mountain goat, because she's back there waddling while I'm climbing mountain faces and stuff. But we enjoy it. So,
have you introduced your kids to those mountains?
Oh yeah, my youngest Peter. Last year we hunted mushrooms so much during the spring, we ended up finding around 33 pounds worth of morels, and he would get out of school, and I'd say, you want to go find some mushrooms? And he'd say, no, Daddy, I'm tired of the forest. So I'd say, okay, we don't got to go today. So, but you find out what works for them in order to keep them involved. And with a young kid, it's just like anything else. Micro doses go a long way. And try a little bit of this and see what you think about it.
Right.
It's keeping it to the point of where it keeps them interested. And I'd have to say the greatest interest is success. Getting them out there and them experiencing the success of the outdoors is what keeps them interested, because you teach them what to look for, even teach them how to shoot with their crossbow or whatever. And then when they get that job done, the joy and the excitement you see on them, and it's a reward in and of itself. It's better than any other success you could personally have for yourself. I've killed a lot of big deer in my life. I've caught a lot of big fish. I've found a lot of big mushrooms. But when my kids find their first of anything, or harvest their first of anything, or catch their first of anything, that enjoyment that you see on their faces and hear in their voices when they squeal, that is a real trophy.
Yeah. So I take it your kids have taken something?
Yeah, my youngest son Peter, he killed a good little 7-pointer this year, and then my daughter Callie killed a giant 12-pointer. I mean, she killed a stud. He's close to, I'd say, low of high 130s going into 140 12-point. And he's a giant. He's a
yeah.
I'm gonna let nobody take him. I had him on camera, and I was like, I'm gonna let him grow. He's got good genes. He blew up this year from last year. I was like, next year he will be a stud. And my wife was like, I want him. I was like, honey, hold up. Hold on. We're gonna talk about this a little bit. And then Sissy said, well, I want one. And so she was like, well, why don't you let her get that one? And I said, I don't know. Here, Sissy, you tell me which ones you like. And I start going through the pictures, and she said, I want that one. And I was like, of course you want the biggest one that's on camera. So in that area, I was able to get her on it the second day of season, and she shot him, and he ran 10 yards and fell over. And that was her first deer. And the first thing she asks all the time, I killed about 150-inch 10-point this year. And she got off the school bus and come running up the driveway, and I was standing over there holding it, and she said, first thing she said to me, she said, is it bigger than mine? And I said, yeah, it's definitely bigger than yours. I said, but not by much. So, but she's pretty competitive between her and my youngest boy. They're pretty competitive amongst one another. So, but them taking their first one was definitely a different experience than when I took my first one. It was something that you just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just something that you have to experience in order to be able to explain it. It's definitely more
Right.
than what. So, but
How did they each react, either immediately or when they saw it up close?
well, Callie, we first thought she missed it because that crossbow blew right through that thing, and he just stood there and was just like, he bound off about 10 yards, and he stood there and he turned and he looked our direction and past us and everything. And I was like, shoot, I believe she may have missed this deer. And I'm just watching him and everything, and all of a sudden he does a little bit of a stumble, and he just piles up, and she squeals to the top of her lungs and starts screaming, I got him, I got him. And I was like, and she's like, I did it. I was like, you did do it. I was like, and I'm surprised you did it. So I was like, this is awesome. And so that was it, kind of how she had reacted. And unfortunately, I didn't get to get that hunt on camera. I hadn't been self-filming at that point yet. And but Peter, on the other hand, his hunt is uploaded on our channel, and it's called Peter's Big Buck Quest. And his reaction it is me through and through. I mean, he is just like how I am. He made the same sounds that I did and everything, and we both like when you watch the video, we both laugh the same way. We both get excited the same way, and he got all sorts of tore up, and he was he's just a character. I don't know how to explain him. He's just an absolute hoot. And but he laughed and squealed to the top of his lungs, and it was just awesome. I recommend go watching that hunt, because it's definitely a very exciting and funny hunt. He says some funny stuff in that hunt. So.
Yeah, I'll have to put a link to that in the description.
Yeah. He'd be happy about it.
Well,
everybody go look.
Sorry.
Look at his big deer. So.
Yeah. I apologize if I already asked this. What's the ages of your kids?
So Peter is 6, Callie is 7, and Simon is 12.
Okay. And did you say Simon's reaction?
So yeah, so my oldest son Simon, he's diagnosed with autism and a speaking deficiency. So therefore, he doesn't necessarily talk to me and you, kind of like how we're talking right now.
Okay.
But, like if I ask him something, then he can respond with like yes, no, something pertaining to that nature. He will, to an extent of say, like if he's hungry, he'll point at something and tell you what that is. But as far as like an ongoing dialogue with me and you, it's not, it's not like that. So having him in the blind and putting him on that deer, it was more or less getting the gun up on him, me shouldering it with him, telling him to look, find the deer, and helping him guide his hand on the trigger and more or less shooting it with him. Now, when we did shoot the deer and I grabbed him and I turned around and said, Sasa, you got it. He did start like getting happy and smiling and everything. So once we got up to it, he definitely thought that the deer was still alive, and he was very, very timid and wanting to get up to it and everything. But as far as over and all, he ended up getting up to it, picking it up, and messing with it and everything. But the response was more of a definitely more calm demeanored response as the other two and everything. So, but
does he need assistance in firing, or?
So he does. He definitely needs the assistance as far as shouldering the gun. I put it on a bipod and everything, or a tripod, and mount it to it, and holds itself practically. But I just put him on it, help him align it, and then make sure he's on alignment. And then assist him in guiding his finger through the trigger and everything to make sure he knows that this is what we're shooting. And that's the first and the only deer he has ever taken and everything, and at his age.
Yeah.
So more or less before, I always took him with me just to experience the outdoors rather than making him try to get one more or less. So, but so.
Do you think at some point he would have the ability to do that on his own?
I do believe so. He has grown exponentially over the last couple of years, I would say. He's gotten into a lot of therapies that have helped him grow significantly. and to truthfully try to more or less kind of find his voice and find his, expression, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that in due time, that I'll tell you exactly what I believe. I do believe in due time that the Lord will heal him and help him get to the point to where he's called to be. And I believe that with all of my heart. I don't have an option not to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's got a good dad to get him there.
I appreciate that.
What about, have your kids had any experience with field dressing or cutting up at home?
Yeah, so they both were, I make them stay present when I'm doing the job and everything. They have to stand there. They have to endure the smell. They
Mm-hmm.
have to get their hands on the blood. It's because that's part of it. Going back to my first time experience, my uncle, he actually was like, "All right, go ahead and dab your finger in there and taste its blood." And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"What?" He's like, "Yeah, you gotta taste its blood." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "If you kill one, in order to kill another one, it's part of it. You have to taste its blood." Well, he was definitely playing a joke on me because I dab my finger in there and, I lick it. And he's like, starts cracking up laughing. And I'm like, "You're a jerk." And I was like, I literally just ate or tasted this deer's blood because you convinced me. So I'm not that, cruel to them, I guess you could say, but I definitely do make them watch and stay involved with the fact of that it's more than just shooting something. It's about honoring the animal to the fullest extent possible. Like, I've actually had people be like, say stuff to me about like, "Why you got all them big deer heads hanging up on the wall?" It seems like it's more about the size of them than it is about the harvest of them. And my reasoning behind that would say is because with that, I can honor that deer to its fullest potential of life, and it deserves that honor.
Mm-hmm.
And a creature to this magnitude, to be able to kill one at its highest state of maturity, it deserves to be put on display because it was a animal that was able to evade danger and to work its way around its homeland to stay alive at this age. And how many shots have ever been taken at it? How many times had it ever been encountered and someone didn't get it? And I was able to get it. So yes, I'm going to honor this animal. And so honoring it comes from taking it in the field and preparing it on the table for my kids. And my kids love to eat deer meat more than probably any other kid I've ever met in my life. That's one thing they pretty regularly request is, "Are we eating deer tonight? And can we have this? Can we have the tacos? Can we have the burger?"
Yeah.
Whatever that they thoroughly enjoy from field to table. And so it's and that is important to me because I want them to understand that it's so much more than just a sport. It's far more than just getting out there and taking something's life, and it's about it sustaining life for us as well.
Right. Yeah. But my kids all love deer jerky. I think I don't know that they're requesting specifically a meal for deer yet, but they definitely like the jerky.
Well, I'll tell you this, my whole family thinks I'm just the deer jerky king and they can all take all mine. So
No way.
Everybody comes in on Christmas and they're like, "Where's my jerky at?" I'm like, it's over there. Go get it.
That's pretty common though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And but as far as you were talking about getting your kids involved, as far as like getting them to request something, just simple little tacos, man, go a long way.
Yeah.
Get in a taco, they go a long way. And but we like our tacos and we like our steaks and everything. So, and I love deer chili. I can't beat that. That's my favorite. So,
is it?
It's good stuff.
Is so with any of your kids, have they talked about any kind of like bucket list hunts?
So not yet. None of them have described anything as far as like the potential to, go and do like elk hunting or anything like that. Cause I just don't think they materialized to that point yet.
Sure.
But as far as the the bucket list of mine's going to be bigger than yours next year, 100%. They definitely are on that game. They're constantly saying whose is going to be bigger and whose is bigger. And Callie right now, she's definitely got the reigning trend of letting everybody know that she's got the biggest deer out of all the kids. So, and because I got nephews and stuff that I take hunting, and whenever my kids get one, of course we send it through the family message chain and everything. And my little nephew that is the same age as my oldest son, they're just 3 days apart. He's like, it's just not fair. It's just not fair. I hunt so hard, and then you got your daughter, or you got Callie over here, and she kills an absolute giant. Her first time ever sitting in a tree stand. So I was like, well, that just goes to show the blessing runs strong in her life. I guess we all better hold dear to her. So
yeah. Do they? Did you end up mounting hers or anyone else's?
Yes, it's still at the taxidermy. All of our deer are still at the taxidermy. I killed, like I said, about a little over 150-inch 10-point this year, and then she killed her big 12. Then Peter got his 7, and then I got another 8-pointer that I got this year, a big 130-inch 8-point out of a quota hunt, and they're all at the taxidermist getting mounted right now. So.
Is that going up somewhere in the home or in their bedroom?
A lot of hours I put in my living room and everything, and just around the fireplace and stuff. But my youngest son Peter specifically requested that his is going on his wall like Daddy's office. So he's like, going on my wall, and I was like, okay, we'll put yours on your wall.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you go to a bunch of different states to hunt. Is there a reason you'd like to mix it up like that?
Well, because of the fact of that, it's with Kentucky, you have one buck tag that you're allowed statewide.
Okay.
And there's other buck tags you can get, but I'm not going to go all the way out there and talk about how you can get those. I can just let other people figure out how to get them themselves. But there are other ways you can get tags, but you have to get drawn for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so once my Kentucky season is done, which last year was such a grind. I hunted all the way to, like I said, till December 19th to get him, and it was a pure out grind from start to finish. And this year I tagged out super early. I killed on October the 16th. And that gave me the ability to set my other hunts up in alignment with being able to go into Ohio this year for my first time in Ohio. And so that more or less is just to fuel the fact of that, where I've started the journey of self-filming now, because I've wanted to do it for years, but you know how it is when you go to want to start something, you get in your head about whether or not it'll succeed or whatnot. But
right.
I decided that I was going to go ahead and do it this year, and just because I enjoy it and I loved it, and it doesn't matter to me about what anybody else thinks or whatnot. I'm just doing it because I love it and my kids enjoy it, and I wanted to provoke the message of get your kids outdoors and don't act like that they're a stumbling block to you. And so being able to do that, it now allows me and accommodates me to be able to try to keep content, consistency. So going out of state is something that allows me to be able to keep, hunting content from September till, February. And in some states like Alabama, they're pretty lengthy in time as far as when their season comes in and goes out. And so yeah, more or less just try to keep consistent content, more or less.
Yeah. Is that public land in all of them?
Yeah, for the most part. Ohio this year, I was graced with a church family. It's actually the church member that was just calling me a minute ago. They have a farm in Ohio, and they were allowing me this year to come up there and hunt their farm and everything, and which was definitely a shell shock to my normalcy, because as I stated before, I'm primarily all public land. So therefore that vast amount of land to have no border, if I know that the deer aren't here, then I can push around this away and go find deer. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do that on that property. If they wasn't on that property, they wasn't on the property. And I mean, when I say I surfaced and scavenged every nook and cranny of that property, they just wasn't there. And if you ain't got food in really cold weather, they're not going to be where you are. You have to have food in order for them to be able to get that high protein and everything they need to, because they're burning so much fat from being moving a lot and trying to stay warm and stuff. So they need that food in order to be able to accommodate that weather and everything. And they just wasn't there. That time. First day they was there before that big front hit, but as soon as it hit, I mean, we're talking going from in the afternoon, it was mid 40s to in the afternoons, it was 15 with a wind chill of like 2 degrees. So it was a big jump. And they have to have food all that time. That's why Ohio ended up this year killing over 27,000, I think it was, deer. Is the biggest and largest harvest they've ever had on a gun week opener in like 15 years. That's because they was probably piled up on a Mount Rushmore of corn somewhere, and they had to go over there and get it. So, but I didn't have no corn in my area, and they was not where I was. So
Yeah.
But,
is that when you deal with food, is corn usually what you go with, or do you ever deal with planting? I mean, I don't know, with the public land, it's probably not, but
you have to find native browse. Your best thing is your nut trees and stuff, acorn. All your have certain time lengths of when one drops to the next. Black oaks early, white oaks middle, and then red oaks late season. Now they all drop primarily the same, but they all are a little more acidic than the other. Everyone talks about white oak, but a white oak's only good for such a thin amount of time. But your mountain oaks and red oaks and everything, they'll fall a lot sooner than like your white oaks and everything like that. And but they have so much tannin inside of that nut that it's like a preservative to when it comes late season. They're now to the point of where they're palatable enough for that deer to want to start feeding on them. So like late season right now, I'll hunt at an oak flat where big red oaks are. I'll hunt that oak flat deliberately and religiously because of the fact of they're going to come and feed on that. And if you can find any like greenbrier or anything like that that's got big briar patches and whatnot, anything green, they're going to want to hang around too. So you just got to find that native browse that they like and want to, gravitate towards. That's also close to their bedding and their security cover and everything. And that's how you're going to find them this time of year. Yeah, so, which I have trail cameras in all different seasonal settings. I have early season trail cameras, mid season, and late season. They're about like clockwork. I know when they're going to show up. So
interesting.
It is. It takes a lot of. If there's every day you get to go scouting with me, it's a lot of walking. So
yeah, it's a good way to stay in shape.
Yes, definitely stay in shape. That's for sure.
So with the kids, what about experiences fishing?
So with fishing, that's Peter's first love. If he could have anything, give him fishing. And he would, if he could choose to be on a boat 7 days a week, 24/7, he would be on a boat 7 days a week, 24/7. Whenever the boat's out in the yard, we're out in the driveway with the cover off, he's out on top of that boat with his little tiny fishing rod, slinging a fake bait across the driveway and reeling it in. So he's in love with it. Callie, on the other hand, she likes it to the extent of I've caught one, I'm done. And it's basically about the same with Simon. I've always said with Simon, the only thing he catches out on the boat is an appetite. And because whatever snack you have in the boat, it will be consumed, and it will not be by you, it will be by him. So you can't pack too much because he'll definitely eat it all. But when it comes to fishing, I would have to say Peter's the biggest, like he's through and through fishing off the wall. So, which I love it too. It's definitely, I'm just glad fishing season and hunting season don't run together at times. But
right.
You can catch crappie this time of year, but you can catch bass too. But at the same time, I like my deer hunting. I like the fact that fishing is at a certain time and hunting's at a certain time. So, but I have a dilemma. I like to bass fish and crappie fish a lot on that spawn. And unfortunately, in springtime, that's when them turkeys start to gobbling and they set into season. So that's a real strong dilemma I'm always having to fight, whether to go chase a bird or whether to get out there on a bedded bass. So, which down here I hunt off the water, so you can literally just pack your stuff in the boat, and when you're out there casting, you hear one bust up in the side of a holler, you just throw your rod down, pull up to the bank, and run up there and see if you can't run and gun one real quick. So
yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome adventure.
It is. It's fun. I'd recommend if anybody could ever go river accessing, as far as like boat access hunting, do it. It's by far the most exhilarating, and you just, I don't know, you just feel different. It's just a different experience. Both that buck and this buck, they both come off the water. Let me grab this picture here real quick.
Yeah.
So this deer right here,
Yeah, I can see it.
that's him right there. And he come off the water, and that one come off the water. And they was actually close to the same cut of one another. And it was that hunt right there. That was a life-changing hunt. That deer right there. It was definitely a life-changing hunt. It was my first river access mature deer that I'd ever killed. And I killed him right at the last day of gun season in 2020, and it just meant a lot. That was a tough year, and the Lord was on my side during that time, and it was just a good hunt.
Yeah, it sounds like something Lewis and Clark would have done.
Yeah, for sure.
It is. So when you say off the water, are you pulling up and running after them like you said, or is it ever shoot from the boat?
No, you ain't allowed to shoot from the boat. So
okay.
I pull up to the bank and tie off and then trek up into the woods and go find the sign that is correlating with the area I'm in. And I've learned a few tactics over the years that when it comes to that style of hunt, you ain't got to go too far, because most of everybody pushing from the other side is pushing them to you. And so you ain't got to go too far, because they learn what's safe and what ain't. And when you sneak in on one on the backside like that, they definitely are not expecting.
But is that in the same mountain area?
Same mountain area, yeah. You can go from one side of the area that I hunt to the other side, and it turns from two different topographies. One's more flat land rolling style with adjacent mountains and stuff, but then you go to the other side and it's one mountain after the next. So
how did you figure out where to put in the water for something like that?
How did I figure out to what?
Where to put in the water for something like that?
So I do a lot of map scouting. I use my Onyx. I can figure out just by looking at an Onyx map about where the deer is going to be and what they're going to use. You can turn on thermal cover imagery and stuff like that, and turn on your imagery of showing where like you're more like you can find a white or a patch of oaks anywhere in these woods, but there's some areas that are very white oak predominant, and there's some areas that are other mixed oaks, and so you find where those patches are with the cover that the deer need in order to bed and feel safe to get to that food, and the topography to be able to use as a travel way, I guess you could say, to that food. And you just kind of learn, what to look for and what kind of works, I guess you could say. Now, I will say this. I don't care what anybody says. You can look at it on that map, but until you put your feet on the ground and you go look at it, it's never, ever the same as it is when you're there in the woods looking at it, as to opposed to looking on that map. That map will give you a good general idea of what it may be like, but once you get there and you see it, then it's a big difference, and you learn where your pinch points are, why that trail's going this way, why it's J-hooking around this way. And so like there's a lot of little methods that you have to apply to it, but it comes by trial and error and just learning a lot and applying it as you get out there. I mean, what what's knowledge if you don't ever apply it? You know what I mean? And the application of the outdoors is literally getting outdoors, and you have to get out there and figure it out. But you can learn a lot indoors too, but you just take it out there and apply it. So
apparently this episode's brought to you by Onyx Maps.
Yeah, that's a plug I gave you because I apologize.
That's cool. I use the same thing. I even use it for things unrelated to hunting, just because of the ownership information, where you can figure out who owns what property.
Yeah. Same thing with mine. I also use mine with mushroom hunting. You know, I look up deciduous and coniferous forest runs. So knowing how a mushroom grows, I'll go to them deciduous areas that have got moisture but not too much moisture, and that have a little topography with certain sets up of incline, and based off of how the sun is rising and how the sun is setting, which way is north and which one is a south facing mountain and which one's a north facing mountain, and you correlate it on the timeline of temperature. There's a lot to it. I'm pretty good at deer hunting, but I tell you what, I'm pretty daggone good at finding mushrooms.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that's probably my highest technique, is being able to find a morel mushroom. They ain't one that can hide from me. So,
what's your favorite deer mushroom dish?
I'd have to say just a good old backstrap steak with onions and some morels, just sauteed in a pan of butter, thyme, and garlic. You cannot beat it. I mean, you can't beat it.
You cook the backstrap whole with that?
So more or less, I just cut them up in butterfly steaks and just throw them on the flat iron for, a minute and a half, 2 minutes on one side, same on the other, and then they're ready to rock and roll. So pepper it up, salt it up, and whatever your choice of seasoning is. I like that Carnes blend stuff. It's got garlic, salt, and pepper, and that's pretty much about it. So, but
very cool. Now I'm hungry. So the water hunt, I think, as you called it.
Waterway hunting.
Waterway. So do you think if you went to something bigger like a lake and came in from that, it would work the same? Or is that?
Yeah. So primarily where I hunt off water is a lake, is a river / lake. It's a river that, runs into a lake and whatnot.
Okay.
And so I've been all over it, and I've found deer all over it. Now I have learned in some areas the soil, or I'll put it like this, in some areas the deer genetics are better in that area than they are in another area. And I'm a man of type. I like certain style of deer. I like them when they're tall and they just got tall tines, and they just go big, tall, typical deer. I love big, tall, typical deer. I think they're beautiful. And I've learned on a basic area where those deer, their genetics grow in that area. And I've got 2 of them right here to prove it. I mean, they look almost identical to one another, but one's significantly bigger than the other one. But they came 4 years apart of one another, or 3 years apart of one another. And so genetics run a long way in areas of where those doe groups are and everything. So.
And are you primarily bow hunting?
Yeah, I'm mainly a bow hunter. I haven't killed a rifle deer since that deer, and that was in 2020. Every other deer I've ever killed has been with my bow since then to now. And and then on some of them quota hunts, I have a muzzleloader shotgun tag, and I use my muzzleloader, and I've killed 2 with the muzzleloader since that one. So everything's mainly bow hunting though. I killed that one with the bow, and then my Big 10 this year I killed with the bow, and then all the other deer in my life past has all been with basically a bow. That was just where I started and where my love began. And for a long time, I was a little head hard on that thought of, you ain't a real hunter if you don't bow hunt. But that I grew out of that, so I was a tankers, I guess you could say. But but I
Yeah.
definitely get out of that. Hunt how you will, and whatever makes you happy, get it done. Because as long as you're out there doing it right, that's all that matters. So
Very cool. And you don't find that adding too much of a challenge when when you're chasing from the water?
nope, not at all. Because yeah, I feel like if I put it like this, if with my style of hunting, learning where they bed and learning the access based off of the wind travel that they like to favor the wind with. Now, obviously, I use trail cameras, so that gives me wind data based off the time that they passed in through an area. So that shows me the favorable wind that they like to use with that point of travel. So if I can set up kind of like a timeline of, okay, I know I have this wind at this certain time, and if I get them in one area, then they're going to pass through this area if I can get that information all together. It don't always work like that, but it does in most cases it does. So when I do it with my bow, I mean, I can shoot comfortably up to 60 yards and be okay with that shot, but I'm likely not going to take that shot in the middle of the woods. I'm pretty prone on not taking too far of 30 to 40 yards. That's about where my standard stays. And I've had a few little incidents over the years where I shot and the deer dropped and wheeled on me and didn't make a good placement. And I'd rather take a good, safe, ethical shot rather than harming that deer and it getting eat up by a coyote or something like that.
Right.
I'd rather just do it the right way. I look at it as if whatever the opportunity is meant to be, it will be. And every deer I've ever killed, big, mature, and everything, has all been 20 yards in the end. So, because I sit right up on them. Whenever you're mad at them and they stop, they about leap out of their skin because they don't expect something to be there. So, but especially that close. I've watched them get right up out of their bed and come piling right off a hill and just search and look around and walk right up on you. And when you make a noise and they just bow up and stop, it's kind of like someone shot cement into their body because they thought, who is here? How did they get here? Because that's their sacred area and everything. So
right.
Big mature deer don't go there because they think someone's going to be there. They're there because they know no one's going to be there. But when you get there undetected, they're like, oh crap. So
do you not use calls then?
I do in the rut. Like I'll use them really in the rut focus times because I know that when it comes to dominance, that a buck is going, if there's a big mature deer in the area and you're trying to play a dominant role as to oppose being the confronting deer to their area, to whether they're ranging doe or whatnot, then I will use calls. Obviously, if you're in the seeking phase when they're running and gunning and trying to find that hot doe, and you start rattling, and I very seldom rattle. I don't do it a whole lot. I've done it this year more than I have in the last 5 years, I'd say. And but it's just that focus of knowing that there's a big mature deer in the area, and if I can entice him with this thought of we're over here fighting over a hot doe, then I will. But it's not very often that I do. I use my grunt call religiously. Like if I will grunt if I see them, and more than anything, but I do blind call sometimes just if I'm sitting there and ain't nothing happening and I feel like something may be in range, then I'll try to see if I can entice something. And it's worked plenty of times, but majority of the time, my motto is silence. If you know they're there and they are in that area based off of your data you've already accumulated off of your cameras and everything like that, you just sit back and wait, and it's inevitable for them to pass through, and you just make sure you make it count when your opportunity comes.
Yeah. Very cool.
I'll tell you something else too, a little estrus call, a little bleak can. Them things is dynamite. I can't tell you how many deer I've caught in off of a bleak can. Just turn that thing over one time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm searching hard, especially if it's in that pre-rut seeking phase. They're gonna come in on a beeline on that thing. So
John, what's that?
They just can't help it.
Yeah, I had a gentleman in the last podcast episode I was talking to about that, and he said try blowing into it.
Yeah.
Sounds more natural, I guess.
Yeah, Jeremy Aaron, DIY, do-it-yourself hunter. He's a YouTuber. He does that blowing method on them little estrus cans, and I tried it one time, and I was like, I don't feel like it was loud enough for me, but
Mm-hmm.
I just turn it over once, let it hit, and just hold and see what something responds to, and pretty routinely, if there's a buck in that area and it's in earshot distance, it's gonna come to it. I mean, it's just gonna come to it. I actually I had my little bleat call, his little flex tone grunt tube, but it turns into a bleat as well.
Mm-hmm.
That quota hunt I was on in November for the muzzleloader tag that I drew here in Kentucky. Uh, on the video, I actually call about 10 minutes before that deer come walking right into him, and he was tending two doe whenever I called at him, and which I didn't know he was tending them until I was coming out after I shot him, and there was two doe standing over there right where he came from, and I just gave a little like an estrus bleat, just acting like I was a hot doe over there, just roaming around, and he came in on a beeline right in front of me, and I shot him. So, but and
Yeah.
that's all on YouTube as well on our channel and stuff. So,
Have you ever seen the can work in late season?
to an extent, yeah. You can get away with it if you do like a fawn bleat,
Mm-hmm.
because your doe estrus cycle is going to be more prone to them going into their first estrus cycle, the fawn that is, and because they're more late season than your more mature does. Now, the only way a mature doe is going to go into estrus at the end of the season is if they didn't get bred in that first breeding cycle uh, when they came in hot, 28 days prior. So in November, that's the only way you're going to get a hot mature doe at that time. Which in most cases, I can't remember what that MSU deer study was, but in most cases, all of your majority of your doe get bred in that early cycle of rut. But there are a couple of lingerers that don't. And but them young 1 year fawn just now coming up, they're going to definitely go in. I actually have a video the other day. I was on my way back from that quota archery hunt, and I was on a back country road, and there was a little half racked buck. He was tending. There's a big doe and then a little fawn doe, and he was corralling her up in a mess of trees and keeping her in them between it and a little creek run, and he was using that creek as like a shield on her that she wouldn't go across. And he
Mm.
was just corralling her back and forth on it and wouldn't let no other deer come to her. And I just sit right there and videoed her in the middle of a field. And but she just was a little old fawn, probably a first year fawn. So, but it's pretty common this time of year. So you can get away better with the fawn call than anything.
That's interesting.
It is. It's very little tiny details that matter when it comes to seasonal hunting and everything. And everything has its season. That's what Ecclesiastes 3. I'll just go back to the Bible. For everything under the sun, there's a time and a season. And
Yeah.
to a deer, they got a time and they got a season. So,
Well, you said you got a lot of your education from podcasts, so now we're gonna have someone else listen to what you're saying and learn something from it.
that's good. That'd be good. That's all I want, is to just be able to be a helping hand to others. I don't
Yeah.
know it all. So I don't act like I'm Liberace over here, but what I do know is enough to say that what I've used and what I've learned and applied 100% has worked, and you can definitely rinse and repeat it. And so the rest of it's in your court. So
Right. So jumping on to go a little more deep with the faith side of things, where would you say you see God in the outdoors?
man, where don't you see God in the outdoors? That would be the better question. And anything that I could ever look at in the outdoors reminds me of the gospel. When I read the Bible and it says that let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Well, everything that's living out there is breathing, and it has the ability to praise God. Even a tree, to its innermost parts of its DNA, is alive. So let it praise the Lord. And so the gospel reflects to every aspect of my life, and not just the outdoors, but to every aspect of my life. And it wasn't always like that growing up, but it took some seasons of experiences to get me there. And but when my number one prayer, and my kids pray it with me when we get in the blind or when we get in the stand, and that is, Lord, you created it, you speak to it to come by. So we have a firm belief and understanding that that God is the creator of all things here on earth and in heaven, and it deserves to be honored. And the gospel is very relevant to the outdoors. You can see it anywhere you go. And, if you've ever read the Gospels and you read and you catch you a big old fish and you start thinking about the loaves of bread and the fish and how he multiplied them, and you just think about Peter whenever he was standing on the bankside and the Lord asked him if he caught anything, and he said, "We've been fishing all night. We know what we're doing. We're professional fishermen." He said, "Well, cast that net on the other side." And he's like, "All right, you crazy man, I'm gonna cast it over here." And well, they end up pulling the biggest haul that they had ever caught. And so little details in my life always reflect the gospel. There's nothing that I do that I don't hear the word coursing through my heart and my mind whenever I'm doing something pertaining to the outdoors. The outdoors is how I live. I'm outdoors every day of my life. So
Yeah. Yeah, I have a article I want to write, which at this point, by the time this comes out, I might have released it, but I wanted to focus on the significance of fishing in the whole of the Bible, which is probably mostly going to come from the Gospels, because that's where most of the fishing quotes will seem to come from. But yeah, I mean, and I just had one that's going to be released soon that goes over also the significance of hunting, and how it dates back to the very beginning, all the way to Genesis, and just there's a foundation there for, I guess, connection to nature, and the types of people that go hunting have a certain sense of moral standards that are a good basis for us to want to reflect in our own lives.
Right. I believe you was talking about Genesis 27, if I'm not mistaken, going into the field and preparing game for the Lord.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Free stand.
Oh yeah.
Standing on the word.
The other one that I mentioned was the story of Esau.
Yeah.
So like he goes through the whole thing, he hunter and all that, and then when Jacob comes back expecting to basically have a very hostile brother, he actually opens his arms and is super excited to see him. And to me, that reflects the kind of mindset of a hunter, because he's putting family first above his own interests.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it like that, but that's awesome. So.
It's one of my favorite stories. I told my dad I like to picture it in modern perspective, and then he just rides up with his motorcycle gang. It's super intimidating, and he's like, Jacob's like hiding with his family, like, "Don't hurt us," and he just gets off. Big burly guy goes, "Brother," wanting a hug.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love hearing people's perspectives of the gospel. That goes to show the unique ability that God has created in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So when you've been in the blind with your kids, do you find that kind of removed scenario an opportunity to talk about things that are a little more personal to them?
Yeah. I'd have to say, when it comes to discussing things with them, I want them to be more in tuned to the importance of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and ask them if they see that you see what that is, and telling them what that tree is, or telling them what kind of bird that is, or something like that. As far as like having those in-depth conversations about anything that is personal to their lives, they've yet to get to that point, as far as like wanting to have the mindset of discussing anything, I guess you could say, like that, because they're so young and everything. But um, just more importantly, we just call it playing hunting. And like with Peter, he's got a little video bow back there that whenever we go and get in the blind, he brings his little tiny bow and I bring my bow. And of course, I'm doing the hunting, and he's just back there. He's acting like he's just shooting something whenever he's got his little bow and stuff. So it's just more about engaging into the opportunity of them being able to experience something that they don't really understand or know what is. And because they may see a bird flying through there, and to them that's just a bird, but that's actually, a woodpecker, that's a blue jay, that's a cardinal, or a robin. Just creating a little bit of understanding, I guess you could say, for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I desire, and am I excited to be able to have like a deep conversation with them at that age, when they get to that point of understanding of wanting to talk to me about some stuff like that. Yeah, 100%. Because I think any outdoorsman may have heard this saying. It's been on all over social media before, but it says that you come out of the woods with a lot less than you went in with. And it's talking about the baggage of life and like the things and the cares of life. A man will go into the woods and sit in a stand, and he'll leave a lot more there than what he comes out with. And it's because more or less you laid it down on the altar, and you surrendered it, and you're just having your one-on-one with the Lord, and you don't have to carry that weight and stuff anymore. And it's just because you were willing to be, subjective to his voice, I guess you could say. So
Yeah.
I hope that was a good enough answer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very complex thing, even with such a simple activity that I guess to us is not that simple. But so do you want to tell us a little bit about your channel?
Yeah. So our channel is Seek First Outdoors. It's based off of Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these things will be added unto you. And I believe that as a lifelong motto, meaning, seek first God in everything you do. And then everything else in your life will begin to be applied that is necessary. In the book of Proverbs, I want to say verse 20, or chapter 20. I can't remember the verse exactly, maybe 13. It says, "For the purpose of a man's life is like deep water, and it takes a man of understanding to draw it out." And that is the basis of our channel. Is about finding who you are as an outdoorsman, finding out who you are as not just an outdoorsman, but as a person, because the outdoors relates to you, whether in the woods or whether at home at the dining room table, whether in the room with your kids when you're putting them in bed at night. Or maybe you're just a teenage kid trying to find out who you are, and hopefully we can be a light to you in that way, to be able to help guide you in a place to where we probably didn't once have guidance, but we want to be that light to those today and in this time. And so you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm constantly posting something. I try to keep content on there pretty consecutively, at least weekly, if not a couple times a week. And it's always doing something with, right now, it's about, outdoor management with our properties, or doing anything with, scouting tactics, late season adjustments, and hanging out with the kids and getting them involved. There's plenty of videos of them helping, going hanging trail cameras and throwing feed out on our personal private properties. And then when time comes rolling around for fishing and mushrooming, it'll be all about foraging and fishing. So we just try to keep it consistent there and everything, but it will always be correlating around one motto only, which is seek first the kingdom. And so that's our goal.
Is it always just activity videos, or do you have a podcast or anything like that?
We just do straight activities, more or less. I'm the run and gunner of the whole thing. I just have the special guests of my kids at times if they want to do it. And Peter's definitely the one that wants to do it all the time. He tells me how to talk to the people on the camera all the time. He says, "Tell them we're doing this." I'm like, "All right, I'll tell them." So, but it's just majority of the current season basis of what it is at that time. I'll likely start getting into the more like into it, like trying to explain certain tactics and kind of doing a soft setting, kind of like this being set, and kind of explaining, how to look for certain things, what to look for when you're there. But just going as time goes, just taking it day by day, trying to be creative. And anybody that knows anything about being a content creator, sometimes you get a little bit of mental block, and you're like, "What can I do today?" So,
Right.
but it's about
Yeah.
it.
Very cool. I've thought about doing part like have them be podcast episodes, but kind of like a couple mini series that are almost like Bible studies with individuals. I don't know if that is something you'd be interested in the future, coming on occasionally.
Youth word, brother. I'm all in.
And then we can actually argue about what the meaning of a
Like iron sharpening iron. I've sword fighted a few times, so
yeah. So there was I was going through some of your videos. There was one in particular that caught my attention that I wanted to I guess kind of hear if there's been any updates. It was the story about a man who needed eye surgery, and then you were talking about the power of prayer, and he didn't end up needing that surgery.
So I'm assuming it's probably the guy from years ago when I used to sell cars and everything. And before I started selling cars, there was a fella that I worked at Aaron's and the little like rental store, and I had a guy that was my manager at that time. He had someone that had come that was a part of his church, I believe it was, and their son had to go through eye surgery, and was losing his eyesight, and he was having fluid coming from his brain, I believe it was, and it was leaking into his eye, and it was causing him to lose his eyesight. And I asked him to bring if he could contact that person because they were going to be going to the surgeon to have all of that assessed more or less. And when I had asked him if that person could stop by the store before he went so I could pray for him because I believe that God would heal him, they were a little, I guess you could say, a little like, well, that's weird at first.
Yeah.
But they definitely obliged and came, and it was me and just a couple of the other guys that were there, and I asked them to just come out there with me. Not all of them was believers, and but not everybody that followed Jesus in the beginning was a real believer either. And but I took out there and I walked to him, and I just started expressing the gospel to him and about how the power of faith. The Bible says that it's impossible to please God without it, and how the power of faith can can induce healing and everything as long as you believe. And it's not by my power nor by my might, but it's by the Spirit of the Lord. And I prayed for him, and just a good old country boy prayer, and just asking the Lord to do what he does best, which is to heal the sick and to touch the broken. And he ended up going to the doctor, and they ran some tests on him and everything. And he was put on bed rest, upright bed rest. He had to sleep upright. He couldn't lay down. And when they ran the tests on him and everything, they said his eye was so clear um, that they was taking him off of all of the bed rest and everything. And I believe it was within the first like week or 2 weeks, his eye had completely been restored, and he had gained his eyesight and everything. And, so That's basically it. I hate to try to like make it into something it's not or whatever, but what I will say is this: is that Jesus definitely did it. It was not me. I don't
Yeah.
possess obedience. That's why the Bible says your obedience is greater than your sacrifice. And your sacrifice at times is your willingness to want to tell people to come and let you pray for them, and just stepping out in faith. And that's the sacrifice of our pride at times. But our obedience is what opens the door to God being able to use us as a vessel to broken and needy people. And so, because we're all broken and needy in some facet, and we all need Jesus in some way, whether we want to admit it or not. But there'll come a time that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. And, let that time be now.
Yeah. But was there something almost outside of you in that moment, or was that just natural for you to ask to pray for them?
Well, at that point in time in my life, I really pursued God on a level that was far different than I ever was knew, I guess you could say. Um, it's hard for me to explain without telling the full backstory of my life and about why my encounter with Jesus was so supernatural. And I'll just go into it. In 2000 and early 2012, I had been going through a really hard stint of life. I was just 20 years old, going on to 21. I'd gotten some really bad avenues of life, and started doing drugs and everything like that, and became very suicidal. And I was in a hotel room one night, and I was about to take my life. And whenever I took a knife and I was going to take my life, and before I did so, I heard a voice speak to me as loud as I'm talking to you, and he called me by name. And he said, "Jeremy, if you never knew me, you wouldn't make it out of this moment. All I ask you to do is to just pray and ask me to come." And I started weeping, and right then and there, as a drug addict, messed up on craziness, Jesus came in that room and he saved my life. And from that point forward, um, uh, about a year and a half later, I had Simon, and that was my journey of the gospel from that point forward. Now, have I had my life's failures and everything throughout that journey of trying to find my path and everything? Yeah, of course. But as far as like being consistent with the Lord, being reverent in my heart and on my mind, He's always been faithful. And so to get to that point of life, that was 20 early or 20 into 2014 going into 2015. And I had been really seeking out my calling in the Lord. And I just felt like that when the Bible says that the same works that Jesus did, so shall we do, but greater works, because he has gone to the Father. I took that verse pretty literal and pretty serious. And so I took it as a provoking of my heart to pursue the power to be a lot in any facet to people. And so that was the provoking, which I would say is the Holy Spirit. He's the provoking agent of wanting to be a lot to people and not to be afraid. I mean, what's the worst people can do? Can they kill you? All right, you're going to heaven. So what?
Right.
They got martyred all the time for being radical. So it's all good.
What was the what do you think the I want to say end game, but I don't feel like it's the right word, but I guess we'll go with it. Or maybe even like the desire when you were getting into drugs, was it to fulfill something for you?
So it goes back to like whenever I was whenever I was that teenage kid finding the love for hunting. Uh, I I really fell in love with it, and by the time I turned 17, going on 18, uh, I had moved back in with my mom at that time and had started becoming a little more rebellious again. And so my mom then was talking with my father, And so I moved to Georgia with my dad. And at that time, I was more or less trying to fill the void of like, all right, I've got my dad now. I've got everything that I've wanted. And but there's a motto I hold strong to, which is that I learned at 17 years old, or going on 18, 17 going on 18, which was the old motto: the grass is greener on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
The grass may be greener on the other side, but it doesn't mean that that grass doesn't need to be cut and maintained. The only reason why it's green is because someone's caring for it. And so that really stuck with me at that point, because I got down there and my rebellious attitude of that thought of, well, I can go change locations, and because I'm in a different setting, that stuff ain't going to follow me. But that's not how life works. You can go here, there, and everywhere, and who you are in your heart's going to follow you. And that's why the Bible says, as a man thinks, then so is he. So whatever you're thinking here and you think about it then, in that setting, it's going to travel with you. It's who you are. So being able to go through that stint of life and to come back and to kind of like realize that, oh, my void wasn't the fact that my father was gone. I had a bigger void. And the truth of the void was the fact that there was a call of God on my life, and I was running from that.
Mm-hmm.
And by running from that, it created an inner anguish inside of me that I didn't quite understand until I did turn 18. And when I turned 18 and I started to really understand who Jesus was, and was like, okay, this might be real, it might not be, I don't really know. And then I go from that 18 to 20 mark, and well, Jesus is definitely real, because he showed up in a hotel room with brokenness and was willing to rescue me and to save me. Like, as that old song goes, it's of Amazing Grace, a wretch like me. Well, that was me. And so I was that wretch. My pastor and my pastor's wife always make this one statement. The Bible says that he uses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. Well, I was the foolish one. Here I am. I'm the donkey that Jesus used to talk to the people. So that's how it all began. It's just failures, man. I mean, the failures of life were the recipe to success, and they were the seasoning that caused the success of life to taste so well. And, just learning how to embrace your failures and not get upset because you failed, but to be happy about the fact that you didn't fail and it was final. You failed and you was able to make it through it and get to the other side. So
Right. That's a interesting journey.
it is.
Going into that, it sort of makes me think of, I don't know if you've seen the Jesus Revolution.
Yeah.
There's a line in there, and I don't know if the guy actually said it in real life, but Lonnie mentions that a lot of those people or kids, I guess, were getting into drugs to fill a void in their life when what they were seeking the entire time was God, and they just didn't know it.
It's 100% it. 100% it. And I'm a firm believer in it, that the void of life that you're searching for is Jesus. And if you don't submit to him, then you're going to constantly be searching.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that just from trial and error in my life. When I tell my wife, it's funny, I tell her about who I was as a kid and everything growing up. She's like, I just can't even imagine that. I like, when you tell, like, when I share my testimony with people, they're like, you did all this and all that. And I was like, yeah, I was basically Barabbas. I was basically him. I was the wild maniac man, and Jesus seen it fit to spare me in place of him. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. I remember, because I've never really had a true testimony story for myself. And I always had that vision that I think a lot of people mistake of the church body being just a group of perfect people. And if you're sitting there sinful, that if they only knew what I did, that they would kick me out, kind of thing. And I was reading a biography by Phil Robinson, and I knew him as kind of a leader of the Church of Christ and very religious guy. And when I found out he was a drunk and a cheat, and he didn't go into too much detail, but just hearing that was like, am I reading the correct book? It was like a shock to my system. Yeah. And it just kind of shattered that whole concept of everybody in church being perfect. And that's when I started realizing the body of the church itself is broken people gathered to lift each other up. And it was, I think it was an important, in a way that was almost became my own testimony, because it was an important realization of what people needed when it comes to a church body.
That's why the Bible says, let every man work out his own salvation with fear and trembling. And that comes from a place of personality. Who you are as a person, God totally understands, because he's created you that way. Now we just need to find out the well of our heart, how to draw out the person who we're truly called to be. And so the church is definitely I call it a wound licking club at times. We all get in there with our wounds, and we're just trying to do our best to make it through. And good news is we got a patch named Jesus, and he's on it every day. So
yeah,
but
yeah, and I can definitely see a continuation of people struggling to accept that concept. My pastor constantly talks about it, because he originally he had no intentions of being a pastor, and then ended up switching, I think, in the middle of college. And when he tells stories of his own sinful life, to basically say, this is all of us, there's people that actually get upset by it and want to walk away.
Yeah, that's just that very I don't like to use this word, but it's the only word that's truly coming to mind. But it's that sense of ignorance and deception.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, it's about the concept and the construct of perfection. We're all perfected in Christ. If we were perfected in any facet, what's the need for Jesus? Like his sacrifice on the cross is null and void if we're perfected, if we're perfect. And when you read like in the New Testament, it talks about how that we're all perfected in Christ, that he who knew no sin became sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. And it's like, when you stop and you think about that concept, and it's like, whoa, the highest form of heaven's righteousness and perfection became something specifically for me when he didn't have to be, but so that I could become something that he is. And because of that, I now can live freely in the identity of a son or a daughter of God. And that all stems from a place of true identity. And a lot of people that want to linger over the thought of thinking that people need to be a certain way, I guess you could say, in order to be used, I'd highly encourage them to go read the Gospels. I'd encourage you to go read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and find out just exactly who Jesus chose to walk with. He definitely didn't choose the church. You have the Sadducees and my mind's going, the Pharisees, and they were the modern church at that time. That was the church, and the very people he came against very often were the religious people. He wanted them to understand the construct of well, shoot, I got a shirt on right now actually that explains this. It says you can sit with us, and it's Jesus at the table with the disciples. They're all
yeah,
and that's kind of the motto. Like, we want the worst first. This is the way I look at it. I want the ones that nobody else wants, because those guys and those girls, if you can get them committed, they'll be the most genuine, heartfelt people you can find. Because why do I know that? Because I was one of them. Am I saying I'm perfect and I'm always 100% on the ball, genuine, and doing it all right? Definitely not. But what I am saying is that I know where I came from, and I know where I am. And I know for a fact that it took a lot of grace to get me here. And if he can do that for me, he can do that for anybody. And I'm never going to look down my nose at anyone else and thinking that, oh, well, they just don't got it, or they just aren't deserving. So,
right.
This is that foolishness to confound the wisdom of people. And you got to just submit to it. So,
well, I'm glad Jesus spoke to you that night.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. It's a good deal. I'm glad too.
Yeah. bringing you here today. Give you a great family, it sounds like.
Yes. And it's funny, I got my kids, I got Simon and Peter and Calissa. And to think that I was 20 at that age and I'm 33 now, so that's 13 years ago that all went down. And and I can remember the thoughts that I was having right then and there in that moment. And to think that here we are 13 years later, where final is not, or failure is not final. You like failure is not final. You're just going to have to grab it by the reins and figure out where to go. And unfortunately, for your flesh and for your disobedience and everything, the only option you have is Jesus. And anyone else out here can say, well, I'm doing good and I'm doing well. I don't need any of that religious mess. It's like, well, one day you're going to not be breathing anymore. And that word is going to course through your soul, and you're going to remember what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I remember the first time I met my pastor, the sermon he was giving, he said the phrase, it's not win or lose, it's win or learn.
Yeah.
And that's stuck with me ever since.
It's a very, very powerful phrase right there. Not always about winning. It's about what you learned when you lost.
Yep. Going back to the Edison thing.
Yeah, it's for sure. The most important thing is just this faith. Anyone that might be struggling out there in life, remember you can relate to somebody, and you're not alone where you are, and you can find hope wherever you are, and you're never too far gone. And if God can use this old country broken kid, then I promise you He can do it in any of you. And I'm just a little old boy, as I would say, a little country kid from the backside of the mountains of Kentucky. And if He's seen it fit to use someone like me, He can use you. So,
absolutely. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate you, man. I've really enjoyed it. I've actually sat here and thought a couple times, man, I don't want this to end. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll get the other series going, and we can continue the chat.
Sounds good, man. Hopefully we get some big old bucks on the ground next couple of weeks. I got that quota hunt still left, and I got an Ohio tag to fill. So hopefully I get some giants on there.
Yeah. I'm probably not going far. I recently put some corn out at the ranch that I go to. It's only like, I don't know, 15 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
That they've very graciously allowed me to hunt. But it's been a slow start to the season, so I'm hoping that I'll see some stuff. I'm going to try to hit it hard after Christmas.
When does Yuns' season end?
The 1st January.
January. Wow, that's close. That's when all deer season ends on the 1st of January.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's I feel bad for the people on the west side because their season starts a lot later.
Yeah.
Which is for me, if I was to ever do any public, that's probably where I would go. So I'd have to wait for that anyways.
Right. That's pretty wild, man. We got till January the 20th, or I think this year, January 15th or 20th. I can't remember. It's one of them days.
Yeah.
And then February the 2nd is Ohio's when it ends, which my quota tag goes out January the 6th because it's not a state tag. It's a federal tag is what it is.
Yeah. Maybe I should check out and see what, so I got South Carolina. I technically could go down to Georgia. It's not too far from me. Virginia and Tennessee is what I border.
No ratio is awesome. Like when it comes to the rut, oh my Lord, you'll sit there and you'll see 5 little dinks run by, but then you'll see 5 giants run through, and it's like, golly. So it's awesome. It's the best thing ever.
Then you get stuck with the grass is greener. Like, is the next one going to be bigger?
Yeah, well, I got a good motto. If the Lord brought it, it's meant to go down.
There you go.
Yeah, man. I tell you, we love our deer meat. I've got 5 in the freezer already this year, and I still have 2 more doe tags to fill in the state, 1 more quota buck tag to fill, and 2 doe quota tags to fill, and then my Ohio tags count as 4 tags. So, which I just use 1 up there because they have a weird a weird law. You have to buy extra tags no matter what. Like if you kill a doe or you kill a buck and you want to kill a doe, you have to buy another tag. It's the
Oh, yeah.
weirdest.
I've heard that from, I think Alaska does that.
Yeah, it's just different. Which we have them here like that in Kentucky, but you have when you buy your tags, you get 4 tags out the gate with the purchase of your license and tags.
Right.
Anything beyond that, you can only shoot a doe, but you have to purchase that extra tag, which ain't bad, but you still get 4 deer before you have to get to that. So
yeah. So is it 3 and 1 then? 3 doe.
Yeah, 3 doe, 1 buck. Yeah, and that's zone appropriation. So more or less, like if you're in a zone 1, 2, 3, or 4s, your zone 1s and 2s, and maybe a 3. You have no zone 1 and 2. You can have unlimited antlerless harvest. So you can kill as many does as you want as long as you're continually buying tags from that point forward. But if you go to a zone 4, then it is a buck only zone, deer and gun, and any type of firearm. And when it comes to does, you're only allowed to take, I think, one or 2 in that zone. But then you have to go outside of that zone in order to fill the rest of your statewide tags. So it's different. And it's because of the CWD and all that happened.
Right.
CWD stuff that happened years ago put a lot of regulations on everything, which our area is getting back to normal again. It's been back to normal last few years, but it gets hit in pockets here and there every once in a while. But for the most part, it's pretty good. But,
do you try to participate in that even when during the times it's not required?
As far as what?
So maybe you always have to drop off, but there's only I want to say 2.5 weeks during November that we actually have to drop deer off to get tested for CWD.
Oh yeah, yeah. So your federal tag, like this year, they had checkpoints to where every deer you got had to be checkpointed, and they 8-pointer I killed. I had to take it to that the base checkpoint, and they more or less run it through tests or whatever to check it, and then that was it. And they just took samples and sent it off to the biologists, and they would say yay or nay. And for the most part, every one of them was pretty well not positive. But I'm sure there was a few cases here and there. But as far as statewide, they do it as if you want to go towards the work of research, then you can bring your animal here, do this, and send in samples and stuff, which for the most part, we don't really do much of that. And everything.
You skip that for all optional stuff?
What's that?
You skip it for the optional, if it's optional?
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. We don't really get into it too much. You can about tell if one's got it. I mean, it's about lost its
Sure.
mind.
Yeah. Basically like rabies for deer, isn't it?
Basically, it's a brain disease, more or less. And I'm not too scientific about it, so I don't want to sit here and act like Dr. or Bill Nye the Science Guy about it. But what I will say is that the ones that I have seen that's had it, you can 100% tell that they've got it because they're like a zombie deer. So
right.
I've not witnessed too many cases in my time, and I'm always in the woods. So I've not witnessed much of it. So.
Would you purposely take one out or just let it go?
I would have to say the laws against it is that when you see it, you have to call the forestry division, call KDFW, and then they will come and more or less assess the situation, because we got game wardens everywhere. I'm actually trying to be a game warden. Hopefully come April of next year, I'll have all of my certifications and stuff done, and I'll be able to get into that program, because I got accepted last year, but I didn't know I got accepted and I missed the deadline. So that's a career pursuit in the coming year. So
okay.
But, so yeah,
then I'll have to re-interview you because I want to get a game warden on here.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I would really enjoy that. I won't probably, if everything goes as planned and I'm able to get that done, I probably wouldn't be legally awarding until the end of next year. So, and Lord,
Is that like a career switch?
Is that what?
Is that like a career switch for you, or is that something on the side?
No, it's not necessarily just a full switch. Like I was a car salesman for the last decade of my life, and I did that for years, and I just got out of that last year because me and my wife opened a pet servicing business here in our home, to where we do more or less like a doggy daycare. And if you go out of town or whatever, we watch your animals and stuff for you. And she already works from home with her career company that she works for and everything. And so more or less that allows me to be able to do what I do now, to be able to be like a full-time content creator because we work from home basically.
Yeah.
So, to be able to pursue the game warden side of life, the conservation officer, that was something I wanted to do in my early young years of going back to when I got into deer hunting. I was like, I want to be a game warden. And because I just always had this method of wanting to do things by the book and make sure everybody else did things right and whatnot. And not being able to afford school, I guess you could say at that time, and to be able to do all that, I never got to pursue that passion. But Kentucky changed this last year. They changed all of their regulations on what they allow and don't allow to be able to get into the program. And I met the regulations and met the requirements, and they accepted me. And like I said, I didn't even know that they accepted me. I just was like, we're going to shoot for the stars, and they accepted me. And I was like, oh no, I missed the deadline. So I ended up having to send in a message, and they're like, yeah, we'll put you back in the hiring pool. And when spring rolls around, we'll contact you and get you back and play with everything. That way you can get in for the training and stuff. So yeah, but there's a time and a season under the sun for everything. So it just wasn't the moment it was meant to be at that time. So
yeah. Is that a full-time commitment, or do they have opportunities like volunteer firefighter?
So like it's full time. It would be full forest division. You would be. I'm hoping that I could get. Now you can pick your area as long as there's openings in that region. And so I'm hoping to be able to get my home region here, because I know the area here like the back of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of riffraff that goes on in like my waterway hunting. I cannot tell you how many illegal bait piles I find out in that forest. It's it's heartbreaking, because when you put in all the time and the work to do it the right way, and then you stumble up on somebody's corn pile that's got hoof prints all around it, you're just like, Lord, how am I going to beat a pile of yellow stuff? And I'm over here working my darndest. So, but I want to be able to help preserve the wildlife, especially the public wildlife, to the extent of what it deserves to be, as a free game, free chase with native browse and their natural habitat, not a coerced habitat that you've created to entice them to come. And I have nothing against baiting, because on my private properties, I'll pile corn the size of that mountain. I don't care one bit. But when it's on public land, there's different rules and regulations, and we need to abide by them.
Right.
So, yeah.
Do you consider yourself, or do you do anything on the conservationist side?
100%. So I'm a firm believer in, on some levels, as far as like when it comes to fishing, if it came with you, take it with you. Just like when it comes to hunting, if you brought it in there, you bring it back out with you. Don't leave your trash. Don't throw your stuff aside. It wasn't there when you got there. Take it with you. And I've actually had a couple buddies get mad at me over the years. I'm like, well, it's just this. And I'm like, that is not how that works. And so it's just one of them things I just try to hold true to. It goes back to my younger years. I was young, dumb, and ignorant. And, I had a lot of lost failures that taught me a lot. And that all stems from there, that, if I honor it, it'll honor me. And I'm going to do my right to honor it. So.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a little morally enamored than most, but it's done well so far. So.
Yeah. You'd probably get along with my dad. He's very black and white on a lot of things, and has trouble understanding people that aren't.
Yeah, my wife's the same way. It's actually funny. My wife, she went to school uh, to be she has a full criminal justice degree, and she don't even use it now. She works in business, which is kind of funny. But uh, she,
I think my brother-in-law actually did something similar, and now he's trying to become an accountant.
yeah, it's just like she. That's what she basically does. Is she does all the like bookkeeping and everything for big Amazon company. And she was initially going to go to school for conservation. She was going to become a wildlife biologist with conservation, and everything was going to be a game warden the same way I was. And but she couldn't. When she was in school at that time, they had regulations to where you couldn't choose. They placed you, and she didn't want to do that. So yeah. But, oh yeah, it's kind of funny. We're both a lot on the same line with a lot of stuff. And when we first met, that's one of the biggest things she. It's funny. It was one of the first things she asked me. She's like, "Do you bait deer?" I was like on private land, but I don't own public. I was like, but I do on private land.
Right.
If I have my preferred method of hunting, I don't shoot them over a corn pile. Which, if anybody knows anything about big mature deer, you ain't gonna shoot a big mature buck on a corn pile. He ain't dumb. He's seen that corn pile and this corn pile and that corn pile, and he has smelt human behavior around that, and he knows when it's coming in and when it's going. He's bedded up, watching it when they're coming and going, and his best route is to live on it at night. And well, you can't hunt at night because that's illegal. So I've learned how to on private how to find, like I said earlier, find their bedding, find their travel points, and set a bait somewhere far off to where the other deer are more or less congregating, I guess you can say. And if he wants to come in there, he will. But I'm going to find him in his bedroom before I do anything else. And that, to me, I just feel like you you honor the integrity of that animal as well, and their ability to get away from you, but you were able to connect the dots to find out where they were. And it's not always, doesn't always happen like that. It's about 99% failure and 1% success. So but when it works out, and it's awesome.
Right.
So I killed that big 10 point this year. I knew which way he was coming from, where he was going from, and the doe that he was going to come check based off of this Oak Ridge flat. And I knew that he would come past this point and round around this side to go to that flat when them doe came to feed. And sure enough, man, he read it like clockwork. And I was in the tree stand 23 minutes and I had him on the ground. But it takes a lot of. It's just funny. I was actually hunting on the other side of the property, tore down the evening before because he gave me a hint 2 days before. And I tore all my set down and took it all the way back to the other side of the property and set up in a tree off of where I made a mock scrape and a trail that was leading to it. And I set up off the north wind, downwind side of it, and he come up on the upside of me within 15 yards at 8:23 in the morning. It was 8:27, and I got in the tree at 8:02 or 8:03. And he got shot at like 8:27, somewhere through there. That's all. But he gave me a hint 2 days before that what he was doing, and I was like, "Oh, I got you, booger."
Right.
Well, the rest is history. He'll be on the wall probably around the start of spring.
What about like planting food plots on public?
So the state used to do a lot of that. Like your agriculture is more prominent in like your western side of the state because it's more ag country. But here on this side of the country, it's funny. I actually met a guy last year. He's an older man. I was turkey hunting. He used to be over the division of this area to where they used to run plots in the forestry around here. But he said that it come up to be such an issue in those times that they ended up losing the funding for it, and that they didn't do it, and they haven't done it since then. So we don't have any like controlled, regulated food areas to where they go in and manage it and crop it out and all that stuff. We don't have any of that.
That's got to be done by a government entity.
It has to be federally done. The biggest and most I would say the biggest and most like plotted out part that you could get is when they go through and they cut out these power lines. Anybody that knows anything about deer, whenever they go through and do a big clear cut in the first year to 2 years in its next growth season, all that new regrowth that comes up, them deer are going to be in there wearing it out. I mean, wearing it out. And that's because green growth in the season, early season, you've got a lot of green and everything. There's stuff going to be coming up in there, wildflowers, other briar style stuff, certain tree saplings that they like, depending on that soil rich environment, whatever that area is and that they're prone to, they're going to gravitate towards it. But that stuff is going to die when the fall, the first freeze comes around. A lot of that stuff's going to die out, and then they turn to that hard mass or the mass crops, which are going to be your acorns and everything like that. And you've got persimmons in the area there, but it's all conducive based to the deer and what they like.
Yeah.
And I don't think that any bait pile will ever trump a natural browse for that deer. It just won't. That bait pile's there from August until January, and then it goes away if you're not regulating it, managing it, and keeping feed in there constantly. But majority of the time, it's from. And in Kentucky, you can't even do August now. You got to do it. When is it? I think they allow baiting now. The first 2 weeks before season is when you can start baiting. Because used to be, they had no baiting regulations. You could just bait all throughout the year, but you ain't allowed to do that now because our turkey population went down so bad and predation was becoming so horrible because them turkey were migrating towards them feed sites. And it was kind of like shooting sitting ducks in a barrel for them coyotes and them bobcats and everything. They just coming up in there and wearing them out. And we took a big hit on our turkey population and everything. So. But it's finally getting its way back. There's some pockets in some areas that you can find birds everywhere, but then you can go to some spots to where there used to be birds 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they're not like that anymore. It's just not the same. I used to go on this property, buddy, you'd find gobblers here, there, and everywhere. They'd be busting one side over here, one over here. They'd be going everywhere. Now you go over there and you might hear one, and that's on a good day, but it's just not the same anymore.
I saw a whole bunch last year while deer hunting, but
yeah.
I didn't have I kind of missed the turkey season this last year, so I don't know if they stuck around or not.
I had a tough turkey season this year, man. I had so many good encounters, but I just couldn't. I go back to my morality of taking safe and ethical shots. I could have busted one through a big brush thicket, but in my heart, I didn't feel good about it. And I just was like, I'm not going to take the shot. I probably could have flat reamed him with that 3.5 inch turkey shot, but I'd let him slide, and I should have, but I let him slide, and I didn't get him in that. But I didn't have much time to turkey hunt too much this year anyhow. So, but I was so caught up in mushrooms. That's the best part about turkey season too, is mushrooms and turkey, they grow together. So out there hunting turkey, you'll stumble up on a patch of morels just laying around somewhere. You're like, my Lord. And I've done it many a times. I'll be sitting there calling a bird back and forth. And I'll look off to the left. I'm like, there's a pile of morels over there. And I'll get up and I'll just start collecting mushrooms. I'll forget the turkey. I'll come back to that. These morels, they don't last too long. So you got to get them while they're hot. So keep up.
The turkey in the same mountain area?
Yeah. So like a lot turkey they're just different the way that they work. You can about assume a turkey's going to roll up if there's any topography, any mountainous range, they're going to go up to the ridge bench, fly off to the highest branched trees, the biggest branched trees, and roost in that area, and they're going to fly down off that into the bottom or to the bench one and just scratch around and graze around in that area. They're a lot like a deer, but they just fly up in trees.
Very cool.
I like all things outdoors. There ain't much about it that I don't like.
Yeah. Just maybe loud people in the outdoors.
Yeah, sometimes them are the ones I don't really like too much. But For the most part, I'm pretty easy going with it all. So, but you have to get your way up to Kentucky one time. It'd change your life, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Humble you real quick if you don't know what you're doing, because you just walk out and you're like, where on earth do I even go from here? But
Well, if I wait long enough, I'll have a warden that could be my guide.
that'd be awesome. I'll guide you still. You ain't got to worry about it. You just give me a shout. You come up here, I'll take you to some hot spots. So no worries there.
When did you say your deer season? Well, I guess the better time would be, although you made it sound like you prefer not to go after big bucks during the rut.
No, I do. I go after. Well, I'll put it like this: when it comes to my statewide tag, I typically have a target. Like with my trail camera data from the early stints of May, when antler growth is taking points, I pretty well can find my target. I mean, this year, by the time June hit, I had 5 shooters on camera already that I had 2 that for sure I was going after. But then when August rolled around, I got another big shooter, which was the 10 and my big 10 pointer I killed, and a big 11 pointer that one of my high school buddies that I went to school with, he killed. And they were running mates. And so I picked the biggest of the bunch and I go after that. I will have to say I am a trophy buck hunter. I hunt the biggest one and the baddest one I can find. But I'm also not obliged to the fact of if I'm dead in the rut and that deer ain't walked by and I see a caliber of deer that I've not shot before walk by, I'm not afraid of sticking that animal. So I like going after what gets my heart going. And, I've got plenty of small deer all along my walls, and but I've got a lot of big deer on my wall too. I mean, this joker right here, he's an absolute tank. He's just a joker. But
is that a 10? So what I'm counting?
He's 100, right around 100, a little over 140, going into 159. The big old boy. But I got him on camera October the 8th and shot him December the 19th. So it was definitely a run and gun for him. And I held out for him. I had 4 different big shooters come in front of me that I could have shot, but I wanted him specifically. And I held out. And 2 days before I killed him, I come in singing the blues to my wife. I was over here whining and complaining. I was like, I'm out here hustling and bustling. I'm busting my tail. Everybody else is killing their big deer, and I'm over here grinding my heart out. And this deer has disappeared. I'm afraid he got shot during the gun season. I'm just singing the blues.
Yeah.
2 days later, I wake up late for my alarm clock, and it's almost first light. And I can't take my boat in because I got hit in a hit and run early in the middle of it was November the 16th. I got in a hit and run. Someone hit my boat on my way back home to go to church one evening, and completely destroyed my whole trailer, jacked my boat up, and I didn't have my boat from November until February. So when season went out, I didn't have anything to get out on the water with. So my spot can be road accessed, but it is a long way to get there. And I just told my wife, I was like, I'm just going to go in by foot. I'm not going to stop hunting this deer. So in the middle of November all the way till December the 19th, I hunted him hard and I walked in on the days that the wind favored my position. And it took me an hour and 25 minutes to slow walk from my truck to my stand. And I got to my stand. When I walked past my trail camera, it was 8:57. And when I got in my stand and set up, he walked through at 9:23, and I shot him at 15 yards, and he ran about 65 yards down a hill and piled up. And and then my cousin come pick me up on my uncle's little old John boat and little hand-tilled motor, and This is the best thing in the world. It's the best way it could have ever happened. I always wanted to pack a deer out of the mountains and on the water on that boat. And that day he let him have it and bring it out there to get my deer. And well, it was a lifelong bucket list hunt that came together out of a point of tragedy because my boat got smacked. And so, yeah. But yeah, it's all big old mountain deer out here. That's all they are. And they're fun, man. They'll make a man out of you if you let them. So,
That
you
sounds
don't
fun.
you don't always get them, but when you do get them, my Lord, is it nice. So,
Sounds like the just the hike itself might be worth it
oh
for
yeah,
someone that hasn't experienced it.
if you're not afraid to get out there and to like a lot of people get scared. Like the thought of being lost in the woods does not scare me. It doesn't really intimidate me.
Hmm.
Why? Because now let's put it like this: if it gets dark, that's a little bit of a different story. Because I've got out there before and the light goes out, and you're just like, all right, my phone's dead. Where am I? So my point of reference is the first light I see from the trees. Walk towards that light because that's towards some sense of civilization. So go towards that light.
Right.
But
I assume you keep a compass on you too.
yeah, I try to keep any type of directional points, which in most cases I've pretty well map scouted an area out before I ever touched feet on it. So I kind of got an idea of where I'm at based off of land markers of what it looks like when I'm in the woods. And but I'm not saying I'm some like Daniel Boone, forest guru to where I know how to get here, there, and everywhere. But what I do know is that I put in the work before my feet ever touch the ground. So, uh, so yeah, it's awesome though to get out there and to just explore and to find and to learn something new, to find out well what kind of mushroom that is if you roll up on top of it, and or just anything. I mean, shoot, me and my wife back early spring last year, me and her and her cousin and husband, we all went out on the boat and went hiking and went cave diving more or less,
Hmm.
and we found a first generation arrowhead. Uh, it was the wildest thing ever. She found it. It was laid up on like it was inside of a cave. And it looked like a shelf had been hollowed out with like they had hollowed out a big old shelf or whatever. And there was just dirt and rocks laying up there. And she said she felt like she needed to go look over there because we had been looking for arrowheads. And she went over there and she laid her hand up on top of that part and she started looking around up there. And sure enough, she pulled out a full-fledged arrowhead, and it's awesome. And it's one of the first generations of them of when they started making arrowheads. I can't remember the name of that thing, what it was, but it's the one long, slender ones. They're just long and slender.
Yeah.
But
Like the old when you have a cartoon of it, the kind of like that classic look.
yeah, the very original looking arrowhead. And but it's pretty cool, man. And that's the best part about the good outdoors is that you just find wild stuff out there. Wild stuff. Sometimes you find stuff you don't want to find. So
Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah,
I think the weirdest thing I found twice was a dead cow that looked like it had been mutilated.
yeah.
It was in the same area too. So a buddy of mine that we used to go turkey hunting in this area, and we started wondering like, is the first time we just thought maybe a cow escaped a pasture, and then when it happened a second time, we're like, is someone guiding these cattle up here, and then just like out of a horror movie or so, like that one. It's like true crime or something like that TV show where they're just having fun mutilating the cows, and he ended up taking a picture. I don't know if he ended up reporting it or not.
It's pretty wild. You can find some wild stuff out there if you get to searching. I just tell you. I've been
Yeah.
out in the middle of the forest and found some skeletal remains that'll have you questioning, like, hey, wait a second. What is this? But there's some wild stuff, man. You find some cool stuff too, though. Especially you get out on the military furlough grounds. You got to think back early in the World War I and everything like that. That was training grounds for everything, and They literally have signs in the middle of the woods that says "Do not touch foreign objects." And it's like unexploded foreign objects, and it's like, whoa. I was up there one time and found a tank round that had been shot through the woods, and it's literally lodged through a big old tree. And that tank round was just lodged right into it. Just it was a part of that tree, and that tree had grown up with it and everything. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen. That was actually just last year when I found that. And but I found a lot of cool stuff on that ground. They got stuff laying around everywhere. But you never know, you might find something over there and go flying to the sky. So.
Well, if I can ever come up there, it sounds like at the very least, I'll get good content just by going around.
Give me a shout, man. We'll definitely head out and do something fun. It'd be awesome. I'd enjoy it. And like I say to everyone, a lot of people get real hard up on wanting to show people their spots and show stuff like this to everybody. But I want people to have just as much success as I've had, because the feeling that I got whenever I succeeded, I hope and pray that for anyone. If you don't want that for anybody, you're a selfish person. So
yeah, no, I get that. Is yours, do you ever camp up there, or is it always there and back?
It's one of my wife's favorite things. So are you asking more or less along the lines of when I travel up there to go hunting?
For the hunting, yeah.
Yeah, so I do I do truck camping. So this past week, actually, when I told you I was on that hunt, I have an older model Tahoe that I take the back seats and everything out of. And I have a big cot that I set back there and all my hunting gear and everything, and bring a little tiny space heater, and I'll sleep out of my truck. And I've actually come to love it quite a bit. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's actually what I'll be doing when I go to Ohio in the next couple of weeks. I'll drive up there in my truck and I'll stay on that farm and just sleep out of my truck. I'll take my extension cord, plug it into their power there, and run my little space heater. That way I don't freeze to death. But
right.
I just hang out in my truck, and I got a whole little power inverter in there that I hook my computer up to do all my editing and everything while I'm there. And it's just me, the Lord, and the outdoors. And I'll call my kids and my wife and just see how they're doing and FaceTiming and stuff. But for the most part, I'm just sitting there spending time with myself, which I've always been kind of a loner anyhow. So it's not really nothing too new to me. I feel like I hunt better when I'm alone anyhow. So. But I got a few buddies that tell me, they say, "My God, if you ever go hunting with Jeremy, you better wear your hiking shoes because you're going for a walk."
Yeah.
So, like, you wear me out getting out here. But I just enjoy it, man. Like I said earlier, my passion is what's around the next corner. What I found this, but what can I find over there? Like, I'm not afraid. I've been covered in so many seed ticks and deer ticks from head to toe. It is what it is. You spray some permethrin and roll on. So, but
you find that even this time of year?
Yeah, you get some ticks this time of year. Yeah, they're more a little less than normal, but in the national forest, it's just all unmanaged property, non-treated, nothing like that. So you definitely run into that issue a lot. I actually just released a video the other day of me and my dog Murphy. I took him out scouting with me the other day and was positioning some trail cameras and everything. By the time we got home, he had about 4 different ones on him, but they were all black mountain ticks and everything. So just get them off and roll on and everything. But as far as on yourself, I don't encounter them too much, which a lot of my stuff I treat with permethrin and everything, so they pretty well stay off of you. But
yeah,
but pretty cool. I enjoy it. I will scout at night. It's actually funny. My wife, I took her on a night scouting trip this year, and we seen that big 10-pointer I killed at night, and it was pretty wild. That night I found out exactly where he was bedding. I bumped him out of his bed coming in at night to go change a trail cam, and I pushed him right out of. He was literally bedding in front of where I parked my truck, waiting for me to pull in. I'm telling you, big bucks are so smart. And he was on the facing ridge to where my truck would pull in. He'd just drop off the backside and roll out. They learn you. And I've always been taught that if you can't kill them in the first 1 to 2 sits, they've got you figured out before you've ever figured them out. Because you're going to bedroom. You're going to their house.
Right.
If someone walks in your office right there and takes that ram and moves it to the other wall, and that's the same concept with your scent and everything. When you walk in there and you start applying certain scent to a certain area and more activity than what it's used to over the last 9 months of their life, they know someone moved that coffee table. So it's a game, man, but it's a game I love. Oh gosh, it gets me excited right now thinking about it. I told my wife, I said, Lord, I'm heartbroken because deer season goes out in a couple of weeks and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I said, because I got to wait till 2 more months till the mushrooms start blooming. And I said, and I don't like to fish in the cold. So.
Oh, yeah. I don't mind it. It was pretty cold to the point that the water was actually warmer than the air.
Wow.
But I did one the other day. Actually, it was, I did it for a podcast episode. So I have that recorded coming out soon. Will that be before this? Yeah, I think it'll be just before this one.
Yeah.
But I have a bird season coming up, or actually, I guess we're in the middle of it, but I'm focusing on the deer right now. And there's a place not far, maybe, I don't know, 35 minutes from me that I want to try out. And if it works out and I have enough time, I want to possibly take my oldest with me and see about introducing him.
That's really awesome. So you have how many kids do you have?
3. I have a 1-year-old. My sons are 1 and 6, and then my daughter is going to be 4 in January.
That's really awesome. Don't blink, brother. They grow up fast. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They grow up fast.
It seems like so my oldest, that first, like even the first 6 months just felt like years and years. But with my youngest, it's surprising that he's already 1. Yeah. Just how rapid things go.
Simon, it seemed like it took forever for him to get big, but as soon as Peter was born, everything just took off, and now he's wild. I'll just put it like that. I'm surprised he ain't in there yelling, "Keep the change, you filthy animal!" So they're in there watching Home Alone right now, or was a little while ago, and he'll run around the house shouting and screaming that all the time. So
he's learning trapping skills.
Yeah. He's a goofy kid, man, I tell you.
I know that. So I also, my primary business, my dad and I run a carpet cleaning company. I'm originally from California, and then my grandfather started a company out there in '78. What's that?
Big bass land out there, California.
In California? Yeah. It's my favorite thing actually was fishing in the Pacific. So yeah. I would do a lot of like calico bass and sand bass. And whenever I go out to visit, if I can, I try to get on a boat. What was I going with the other thing though?
That's the thing when it comes to these seasons. I go so hard in one season. It's all I focus on, and I abort everything else. And then when the next season comes in, I abort the other stuff and focus on it. So I'm very one lane, one-minded kind of guy when it comes to that stuff, but I devote all of my time and my energy into it. That's how I've been able to become successful with it. It's a lot like kind of like what I do with I'm actually a worship leader and everything at my church. I sing.
Oh yeah.
And everything, and so it's a lot like that. Which that's a never-ending season. It's consistent. It's constant. So you got to be instant in and out. So
right.
But yeah. So, but it all correlates to the same stuff. It all ministers the same way. Everything I do is all outdoors based and worship and music based and everything. So, cultivated from the same place, and that place just is Jesus. So.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Did you kill that ram back there?
I did. Yeah, that was. What did I put? 2022.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Where'd you get that at?
That was California.
That's awesome.
There's a plate. What's that?
Okay, so did you take it by firearm or?
Yeah, it was. I've actually used. Let me think. Yeah, I've used the exact same rifle for all my big game so far. It's a Desert Tech bullpup with an extended barrel,
Yeah.
which visually probably looks a little over the top.
It's still cool.
Yeah, I mean it's surprisingly accurate. And I originally got it because I saw a guy, what's his name? It's a famous firearms channel, Grand Thumb.
Okay, yeah.
And he shoved a bunch of dirt and stuff like that, and then he cleared it a couple of times and it fired like normal. And I thought that this is my like if the big one happens kind of firearm. I need to get this thing.
Yeah.
And I think so. The only other rifle I have that I can use for hunting is a Mosin.
Yeah, most of the guys.
Old Russian gun, but I've outfitted it with all original stuff. So like even the scope is super old. So I haven't, and it's super heavy. So I haven't taken it out to actually hunt yet, but it was my grandfather's. So at some point I wanted to use it to take something.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I've actually had a couple 7.62 by 5.4s, and they're awesome guns. I mean, my brother, he's a military vet. He's a 10-year Marine vet, and so he's always been super into those late military style rifles and everything. And there was a few years back for Christmas, I actually had one tapped and scoped for him in that old style setup to make it look like that old Russian sniper rifle off of Enemy at the Gates and everything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love them most in the gun. They got a special place in my heart. So
yeah.
You can find ammo for them things anywhere.
Yeah. I had, part of the reason I haven't, I've also haven't had a chance to use it to hunt is you have to have, non-lead for absolutely everything in California. I don't have that problem here. I just haven't had time to use it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can get to use that thing because they do some damage. I'll just tell you, they definitely put her to it.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I haven't had a chance to sight it in I'm at like 100 yards at the ranch that I go to. It's about the average of what I can see. And I think previously I set it to 200, so I need to adjust it. And I don't know if I'll have time the rest of the season, but, I guess if I do, I'll make it my last day or something like that.
Aim a little low. That's all you got to remember. When it comes to 100 to 200, you're probably shooting 1.5 to 2 inch high, maybe even 3 inches, if that.
Mm-hmm.
I just aim a little low. If they're 100 and in, aim a little low and hope for the best. So.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm trying to. The place I was just telling you about that does the bird hunts. They supposedly have a rifle range, so if I can try to make it over there, maybe I will.
Is it pheasant or is it duck or what do you hunt?
They have a place for duck. I haven't had a chance to find out what type of duck. But for the January hunt that I would do, it would be like a mix of pheasant. I can't remember if it's quail or dove. It's one of the two. And then chucker.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say there's one more, but I'm not 100%. The one I'm most interested in, though, is the pheasant.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that. I've never been bird hunting in any facet, but I got a couple buddies that are wanting to do it, that do it often, and I've been wanting to tag along with them and try to give a shot at that because I've always wanted to try it and stuff. So
yeah,
I might go couple of mounted around the house. I think they're real pretty.
Yeah, I got one. It was one that I did back in California in my garage.
Yeah, pretty fun, man.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a good place. If it is, and you ever are down here, I'd be happy to set something up.
Sounds fun. Like I said, when it comes to this YouTube stuff, I try to travel as much as I can to try to just keep content relevant and everything. So, but I'm never shy of the game of the outdoors. So when I'm pretty pretty easy going with it. Someone offers it, I feel like I ought to give it a shot and see how it goes and everything. So
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. As much as I can, try to show up.
sure.
Yeah.
Especially people take time out of their day to want to invite you into something that, I mean, not everybody gets them opportunities, so you got to utilize it.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, it sounds like we have some tentative plans to maybe do some like crossover content.
That'd be awesome, man. I'm down. Definitely down.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate it. This has definitely been the longest interview so far for me.
Well, no worries there. I actually looked at the clock a minute ago. I thought, my Lord, we went forever.
Yeah, I think, let's see. We got to be, I don't know, somewhere between 2.5 to 2:45, I want to say.
It's all good. The Lord was high and lifted up, so that's all that matters. So
Yep.
we never glorified him. We were just blowing hot air. So
yeah, well, I really appreciate it.
you as well, sir. If you need anything, give me a shout, and I appreciate the opportunity again. So
Absolutely.
you have a Merry Christmas, man, and God bless you.
You as well. Enjoy it with your family.
And see you.
Take care. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And if you want to join the adventure, you can pick yourself up a nice hat or a camping coffee mug and brew yourself some coffee right above a nice little fire at greatoutdoorspodcast.com. Oh, kind of grainy.